David in orange, standing in the light, up and coming star with the whole world watching tight. Preliminary hearing, cold eyes on the door, one girl's untimely end, and we all want more. What did you see? What did you hide? Why does the truth keep slipping aside? Truth ourselves. The prosecutor moves like smoke through a room, keeps it all secret, leaves a bruise on the truth. She attacks Steve Fischer, now the paper spin, everybody's asking what is buried in. Did you see? What did you hide? Why does the truth keep slipping aside? Justice for Celeste. Truth ourselves. The world leans in on a wire thin thread. Will it move to trial or go back to the dead rabbit? With the camera, BJC live on air. Everyone is waiting for the answers there. Justice for Celeste. Say her name out loud. Justice for Celeste. Cut through the crowd. Is she hiding more? Is she covering someone else? Justice for Celeste. We need the truth ourselves. Justice for Celeste. Justice for Celeste.
I'm not crying, you crying. Yeah, it sure does. Hits you right in the AI, doesn't it? This is how AI is used for good. This is how you reharness the AI and use it for good. Woo, okay. Yeah, so I have been so freaking inundated and I don't know, overwhelmed, I guess, with all the information with this whole Briggs and minifigs saga, that I haven't been keeping up with the every single detail on the ground of what's going on with the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. And it's a very important case for the world. It's a very important case to me. It's a very timely case. It's a very, I don't know. I think it's just the time for these. It's always been the time for justice for little girls that get murdered. Okay, obviously. But you know, the whole so-called Epstein files came out, a little bit of them, what they, wanted us to be able to see. And, there hasn't really been any justice. There's been no justice for any of that. There was the whole Time's Up so-called movement. There was the whole Me Too so-called movement with directors and actors and Hollywood and music industry. There was, 5-6 years ago, the horrendous slavery and abuse, sexual and otherwise, of Britney Spears. And it's like over and over again, we don't see justice. Over and over again, we don't see transparency. Over and over again, it feels as though the bad guys are getting away with literally murder. And I just want to be very clear, David Anthony Burke is and should be presumed innocent until proven guilty. But it ain't looking good for him. I have said since probably September last year, when the body was found in the so-called frunk of the Tesla that David has, or that he owned. It's very unlikely to me, in my opinion, in my mind, that David did this alone. It's very unlikely. I think he had help. And if he didn't have like straight up actual help, of course I wasn't there, I don't know, this is all just speculation. But if he didn't have so-called help, at the very least, it seems like impossible that somebody didn't know about it. It seems almost impossible that David was left alone for long enough to effectuate this, not only the plan, or if it was a plan or not, but not only the act, but also the covering up or the dealing with the aftermath of the act. It just doesn't seem likely to me. The kid, the guy, the man, the grown man, couldn't even rent his own house. He had to have Josh Marshall rent it for him. The landlord in the house that David was living in, where this horrific crime supposedly took place. The landlord of the house didn't even know David was living in there, didn't even never heard of a D4VD. So this week is the preliminary hearing. This preliminary hearing has been pretty interesting, like how it's all played out. So David was on tour back in September 2025, last year. He was going on tour. It was his first tour as a headliner, but he had gone on tour with big artists in the past, including SZA. He was going on tour, and he was like on his first or second, stop of the tour when this body was found in the front trunk of his Tesla. And the body was found in the front trunk of his Tesla, actually at a tow yard. His car had been towed. So the people that work at the tow yard, they smell something coming from this car. Probably they saw some other things, like maybe insect activity, maybe flies flying around or whatever. And they call the cops. The cops show up, open the trunk. I guess they get a search warrant to open the trunk. They open the trunk with the search warrant, and, lo and behold, there's these bags there. 2 bags. They open the bags. It's maybe it's a body bag, maybe it's a trash bag, kind of unclear. The reporting has been a little bit vague, and I personally am not going to go out of my way to look at any of the pictures if they ever come out. Okay, so there's that. So, there's these bags. The cops open the bags or whatever, and they see that in one bag, there's limbs. In one bag, there's a torso with a head attached to it. And the body is so decomposed that they can't identify what in the hell is going on. They call the coroner or the medical examiner or whatever. He comes, or she, whoever, they, whatever, come and obviously pronounce whoever the body is dead. Days go by, maybe weeks. I'm not exactly sure. I think maybe it was about a few days, maybe a week, maybe 10 days or something like that. And then we get news that the body has been identified. Now, when we heard about the body at first, they said that the decedent weighed about 70 pounds or 75 pounds. So right off the bat, I was like, that's a kid. That's a little person. That's a tiny, but that's a little bitty person. But of course, there was like decay, decomposition, et cetera, et cetera. So we didn't know. It was right around the same time I was reporting on Nova from No Jumper and Soft White Underbelly. And it was just really on my heart and mind that it doesn't feel like anybody in positions of power and authority over there in Los Angeles are taking up for these little girls who are in vulnerable positions and all that. So then you start looking into David himself, David Anthony Burke. He is, at the time of all that happening, he was 20 years old. He's on tour. He's an up-and-coming so-called music star or whatever. I'd never heard his name in my life at the time. He ended up being the most searched person on Google, period, for the whole year of 2025. And all this went down only in the last part of 2025, like starting in September. So everybody across the world seemed to be interested in the case. I saw somebody in my chat earlier saying, like, I just heard about the David case. I just heard about the David case yesterday. I don't know how, but welcome to the case. Whew. And that's why I wanted to make that little AI slop song. I did make the little music video in about, 10 or 15 minutes. I just added some pics and stuff, but it's always been kind of weighing on me and sort of nagging me that David doesn't seem competent to do all of this and to have it hidden for that long. It seems like maybe he had help, and even if he didn't have help, it seems impossible to imagine that somebody didn't see it, know something, smell something. If you smell something, say something, and they weren't saying the something, okay? So, a lot of people, including me, were like, now hold on. You mean to tell me that a body chopped up was found in anybody in the world's trunk, okay, like anybody's car, and they weren't immediately arrested? Now, it was reported at first that he was cooperating with the police and all of that. Ends up coming to find out that wasn't true. Of course, Chief Propagandist of Hollywood, Mark Garagos, and co-chief propagandist of Hollywood, Harvey Levin of TMZ, who is in the Epstein files, by the way, they immediately kind of come out and start making all these different theories. They start spreading rumors. They start drama. They, start spinning. They start spinning as they do. All the while, nobody's been arrested for this little girl found in a trunk. So eventually David gets called off the tour. Eventually the tour is over after not that long after. He had some deals. Like, this was really the start of his, like, mainstream huge career. This was the big moment for him. This was the moment he had worked all of this, these years for. Everybody worked toward this moment with David. He had done a lot of work, I will say. And so had his team. He was going to middle school, high school, standing outside, passing out tickets. He had a very thriving, active Discord. And he was starting to become more mainstream. Some of his songs, I believe it was maybe 2 songs, I had actually heard before because they had gone viral, kind of like on TikTok clips or whatever. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if I'd ever heard Romantic Homicide before. But one of his songs, probably the most successful song that he had, was called Romantic Homicide. And Romantic Homicide ends up being kind of prophetic because not just the words, not just the lyrics, not just the sort of droning, sad, tone of the song, but because, like, in the music video, it's like a guy who's wearing a white shirt covered in blood and he's basically killing and dismembering someone. Or he's being killed and dismembered. I don't exactly remember. But all his videos, his music videos, are pretty violent, grotesque, bloody. His merch had all this blood on it. He had like a bloody shirt making factory. He was really blowing up. Jody, good point. Exactly, yes. Exactly, yes. He had performed at Coachella that year. He was going places fast. He had signed a deal with Hollister to be like a model. Like a what do you call those things? Like the face of the brand type of thing. Hollister. He had signed a deal with Crocs. Maybe it was a Crocs X Hollister, but like he was like, Crocs and Hollister, these are big names. Coachella, that's a big show, or a festival or whatever. So it was, a big moment for his career. So then you kind of start realizing, okay, they found that body. They found the body in September. But the tour had actually started at the end of July or the very beginning of August, maybe July 29th, 30th, or like August 1st. It's unclear whether he actually did start the tour on the 31st or not, but it might have been the 31st of July. So the end of July was when the tour started / early August, and then you start looking into the tour. The first show of his tour, he had a huge casket rolled through the crowd, a huge casket. And then as I don't know what in the hell, PR marketing, bonding, witchcraft ritual, girl, your guess is as good as mine. He had the people at his show, instead of signing like a guest book, He had the people at his show write notes to dead people. People they wish they could tell him one last thing, and they would write a note and then they put it in the casket or whatever. It was very weird. So, but whatever, he was kind of one of these like alt rock indie whatever, definitely nothing weirder than Marilyn Manson ever did or whatever, right? So it's kind of like that all happened at the beginning of August. Celeste was dead at that time. She was dead and gone. She was 14 years old when she passed. So then we start getting other little evidence from the past. The internet is forever. And Discord is demonic. So we start getting evidence from, and I can't substantiate it, obviously. We'll have to see how it goes in a trial if it gets to that point. But we start getting evidence from like Discord that there was a girl named Celeste that was constantly referred to in his Discord. There was a girl named Celeste who appeared with him on streams. Then videos start coming out from those streams. There was a stream they did together with Celeste. Her face is there clear as day, and David. And at the time, she was obviously, for her entire life that she was alive, she was underage because she died when she was 14. So she's underage. I'm not sure how old he was in the video, but he was at all times relevant, 5 years older than her, about. So even if she would have been 12, he would have been 17. Even if she would have been 13, he would have been 18. You see what I'm saying? So it was pretty bad, even if he was also underage. But then in the live stream that they did together, they talked about Epstein and R-wording kids. And then David's like, oh, gotta delete that one. Her. It was just weird and odd. And all this stuff starts getting discovered. No arrests are made. And there was other stuff that started coming out that this whole team, this whole crew had been kind of like, I don't know, maybe misleading, maybe dishonest, maybe not. But I had heard of this private investigator named Steve Fischer. Now, to become a private investigator, you can't just decide one day you're going to be a private investigator. It's kind of like being an electrician. You have to like apprentice for somebody for years before you can become a private investigator. And so you have to have licenses. You have to have certain things. And in different states, you have to have different things. But Steve Fischer is a missing persons private investigator. That is his specialty, finding missing people. And he has found dozens of missing people, missing persons, working with families and things like that. So I had heard of him before on at least one case before that I had covered, the Emmanuel Haro case. Remember the little missing baby from Riverside County? And they never found the baby, and the mom supposedly, someone walked up on her and hit her over the head and said, hola, all that. Put a one in the chat. You remember the whole Emmanuel Haro case? So I'd heard of Steve Fischer before because he was kind of looking for a missing person in relation to that case. And then he ends up kind of overlapping in the Emmanuel Haro case. But then not that long after that, maybe a few months, maybe, this Celeste Rivas Hernandez case comes up. And again, Steve Fischer was already working on a different case of a missing girl in California or something like that, like around California. I think it was in California. And when the news broke that there had been an unidentified body in a trunk found in a tow lot in Hollywood, tow lot or whatever, Steve Fischer was like, oh man, that might be the girl I'm looking for. So that kind of draws Steve Fischer into the case. Come to find out it was not the girl he was looking for because later on Celeste's identity was revealed, or, the remains were identified. So Steve Fischer now is a little invested in the case. And like I said, a bunch of other shady stuff is going on in this case. Like nobody's been arrested, at the time. Obviously now this isn't the case, but I'm kind of walking y'all through like how we got here because I've done a lot of stuff since that. And so we're just kind of recalibrating here. So Steve Fischer gets kind of like drawn into the case because he thought maybe the body that was found in the tow lot was maybe somebody, that he was looking for, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't, but now he's kind of like a little interested in the case. Well, the police were not giving any statements. They gave one or two that indicated maybe they were investigating this as obviously a homicide because clearly the remains didn't jump into the car chopped up by themselves, somebody put them in there. And that's when the rumor mill was really going at its strongest. Harvey Levin and Mark Garagos, in my opinion, appeared to be trying to make it out like Celeste was this bad kid. She was maybe doing substances, maybe she was drinking, maybe she had an OD, and maybe David just didn't know what to do, or maybe David had nothing to do with it. There were always people in and out of the house. It really seemed like they were doing a cover-up, or at least a spin. Now, I'm always saying, and I really believe it, everybody has to be presumed innocent until they're proven guilty, because people get railroaded, people get lied about, especially over there in Hollywood. There's been some things about this case I have always found inexplicable or unexplainable. For example, the timeline. LA was having record-setting heat waves last year. In the summer, like about a year ago. And Celeste was supposedly killed in April. So if she was killed in April and these heat waves started May, June, July, August, September, and she was just basically cooking and baking, her remains were basically baking in a car in the front trunk, like of a black Tesla, I imagine that the remains would be smelling a lot sooner than September. Okay. April to September is a long time in a heat wave. Then when they found the remains, we started to get reports that partially the way they identified her body was that she had a finger tattoo. And the finger tattoo said shh, S-H-H-H-H. This finger tattoo situation always confused me. I'm not a coroner. I'm not a forensic pathologist. I've never even taken a class where I had to see a human cadaver. Okay, I don't know how decomposition works. I don't know how fast it goes, but I've been around, animal hunting, things like that. Like even biological decomposition happens very quickly. Like if you leave a deer, you see a deer on the side of the road, it's only, it's a few weeks before it's just a skeleton. Stuff comes eat it and stuff, so maybe that could account for some of it, but like biological matter of a mammal is biological matter of a mammal as far as I'm concerned. It just never really made sense how they were so able to like identify a tattoo on a finger to me, but that's just one little nitpicky thing. There were like a whole bunch, it was a constellation of things that I found to be weird and just unexplainable about this. Like the car was stinking so bad in the tow lot that it only sat there for 2 or 3 days, but it wasn't stinking that bad on the street. Nobody called and reported that there was a stinky car. Just stuff like sort of like wasn't really adding up. And then on top of that, nobody was being arrested. On top of that, the media, specifically Harvey Levin and Mark Garagos, who, remember, these people they are in LA. TMZ means 30-mile zone of where movies are made. Okay, these are LA people. They have people, they know people, they have sources. TMZ, hate them or love them, right or wrong, often get exclusive sources, and it's often correct. Sometimes they be lying, but TMZ, I will remind you, and I always do, TMZ was vital in the identification of Celeste Rivas Hernandez's remains. Vital. TMZ knew the identity of Celeste before the LAPD. TMZ helped to facilitate linking up the family of Celeste with the police. So while they are shady, they also are very close to the situation. It also started to surface that Beth Silverman, not Beth Silverman. Whew, girl, we're going to get to her. It also started to surface that Blair Burke, who is an infamous, evil, diabolical Hollywood attorney. Blair Burke, no relation to David Anthony Burke. He's representing her. She's representing him. So Blair Burke is representing David Anthony Burke. However, the last name Burke is spelled differently and they're not related. To my knowledge. One's B-U-R-K-E and one is B-E-R-K. However, y'all need to know black people and white people can be related. I got black cousins. I know some black people, y'all are in the chat. Y'all got white cousins. So just because people are white and black, that does not mean they can't be related, but their names are not the same. Anyway. So no one's arrested, for months and months and months. The police are not being very forthcoming. They maybe made a couple statements, but they were like, this is under investigation. The DA didn't say that there was anything that they were going to prosecute for. The police even came out and said at some point, the only indication of any crime that we have so far is possibly the improper management or handling of human remains. We don't have evidence yet that this was a murder. So we're not going to be prosecuting anyone. We got to wait for these, reports and exams and autopsy, this, that, and the others to come back, whatever. So it didn't seem like there was really a sense of urgency. David, voluntarily called off his tour or whatever. And then it ended up finding out, eventually he did get removed from or kicked off his label, but that didn't happen for a long time. Like in this time, I'm trying to rewind, because now we're in the preliminary hearing. Okay, great. David's being prosecuted. Great. But I'm just trying to remind y'all, like what really happened and how we got here as a 30,000 foot view. So all the while, we're not getting any answers. Celeste's autopsy results are finally ready to go. They're finally ready. And guess what? The LAPD goes to the court and gets it all sealed. So no one's gonna get arrested. And now the autopsy results are sealed. Eventually, the coroner / medical examiner would post a public press release on the medical examiner's website about the case. And he said, the lead head medical examiner, he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but the police have, against our will, gone to the court and gotten all this stuff sealed. It's supposed to be public. We would love to release it to you, but we're not going to be able to for the time being. So more secrets, no transparency, and this is all being approved by a court. So I don't remember exactly the timeline, but at some point during all of this, the owner of the home that Celeste was presumably killed in, and presumably where her remains were stored in the garage for who God knows how long, the owner of the home, probably feeling duped, probably feeling lied to, probably feeling tricked, and also probably feeling pissed off because it's going to be pretty hard to rent that home out for $20,000 a month if somebody done killed a 14-year-old over there or whatever. He's had it. And he hires Steve Fischer, the private investigator. He hires him to investigate the whole situation. He said, look, I own the house. The cops have already come here and done their raid. David and his manager and everybody have now moved out. So Steve, why don't you come over here before I have this house cleaned out and you investigate. You come look and you try to tell me what happened in this house. Because at the time, the landlord had no idea whether or not Celeste Rivas Hernandez had actually been inside that house. There were security cameras set up on the outside of the house, but the landlord contended that he never saw those because he did not have access to view the footage from those cameras. He said he would provide the service for, the people who would live in the house, the tenants, but they would have to sign up with their own logins. And so he's like, I can't even go into the cameras. That seems hard for me to believe, but I'll just, go with that. So he hires Steve Fischer. Steve Fischer goes into the house and he finds a lot of stuff in that house, many things that he did not think needed to be there still. He's like, why didn't the cops take this? One of the things he found in the house, for example, was a burn cage, like a little miniature crematorium. Now, it's really just a metal cage that you can burn stuff in and it doesn't melt at really high temperatures, but it was still in a box. It was taped up in the box. And because it had been taped up in a box, it looked like it wasn't probably used. However, why did he have a burn cage? Steve Fischer also found, I think, a chainsaw or a box to a chainsaw or a chainsaw in a box, something about a chainsaw. He found that at the house. And it's like, all right, maybe you don't bring the burn cage back to the police department, but y'all couldn't have brought the chainsaw? Steve Fischer found a camera. Like kind of more of an old school camera, like digital camera, like how we used to have, cameras. He found a camera with a bunch of stuff in the photo roll. The cops didn't take that camera. There was all kind of stuff they didn't take. And Steve Fischer was just started to ask why. Why aren't the cops letting us see the autopsy report? How did Celeste die? Why can't the coroner, the medical examiner, say what he found or they found over there? These questions. And why has no one been arrested? And so the fact that nobody was arrested yet, it led the public to start asking the reasonable question, did David act alone, or is he responsible for this at all? All the while, people are digging up lyrics. People are finding old TikToks and old live streams and old statements that David had made. It starts to surface that David had apparently in his own Discord admitted to people that he used to be addicted to gore, which is extremely graphic images, like, you know, you might call it a SN, you know, I'm going to skip a few letters here, UFF film or pictures, you know, really graphic, really, really, like, people are basically, you know, like, he said that when he was, I think, 10 or 13, I don't remember the age he said he was, maybe 14, 11, I don't remember the age he said he was. It was really young. He said he, you know, accidentally, inadvertently came across a cartel unaliving video on Reddit. It was just right there on Reddit, and he saw someone basically on video losing their life by the cartel, and he became fascinated and would seek out this type of material. And he said, apparently, allegedly, look, I've never been in the Discord. These were things that were just circulating, and I can't substantiate that he actually said this, but I did see the picture, a screenshot from apparently the Discord. Yeah, better try again. That's a good point. Probably maybe the age she was, 14. But remember, he met Celeste. Again, there's mixed reporting on this, but he met her before she was that age. You know, maybe she was 10 to 12 years old when they first met. We'll say 11, but she could have been 10. She could have been 12. She was in that age range when they first met. And apparently, you know, he entered at some point when she was 13 or older into an S relationship with her. That's what he's being accused of. So Steve Fischer gets involved. He finds all this evidence in the house, and he starts kind of like tweeting about it. He's like, okay, is someone gonna get like in trouble for this? Like, because I know for sure if there was like a chopped up body found in my trunk, I would have got arrested that day. So what's going on here? Why is months and months going by and David's not arrested? Why is everything so secret? What's the big secret here? This is like a very, very lucratively funded police department. It's supposed to be this elite. I mean, the LAPD is supposed to be on par with like the FBI. Like, they are extremely funded and well resourced and extremely connected. I mean, the most famous and rich people in this whole country live over there. So it was just weird. Like, where's the urgency for this little girl? And people started to say, you know, if this was a rich girl, or if this was a white kid, or whatever, maybe there would be justice. Maybe. But I actually don't think it has as much to do with the identifying, you know, features or socioeconomic class or anything of the victims. I think what the cops really focus on is the socioeconomic class and the power level of the perpetrators. Because it's like, before they go after somebody rich that's going to be able to hire a Blair Burke or a Mark Garagos or one of these types of people who has access not only to great court abilities and resources and things like that, but also the media. I think they want to make very, very sure they're going to be able to get the person, or maybe they get, you know, maybe they're so corrupt they like to get paid off or whatever. So the case is weird. You know what I mean? It's just weird. So finally, back in April this year, finally, you know, all this stuff started going down in September last year. Stuff gets sealed. Apparently it was by December, the coroner knew exactly, the medical examiner knew exactly what had happened to Celeste. He knew exactly how she had passed away. And it was from stab wounds. 2 stab wounds are her cause of death. There was no question about it. He knew for sure. And he was gagged. He couldn't say that. He couldn't release it. He couldn't announce it by court order. Court ordered gag. So that was in December. He knew for sure how she died. And all the while, we have Mark Garagos. And just to let y'all know how the webs, Mark Garagos, very famous Hollywood lawyer, he has a daughter who's also a lawyer. Her name is Teeny Garagos. And she was Diddy's lawyer. She was one of Diddy's lawyers. And so these people are freaks. They're freaks and cretins. And they represent the worst of the worst. So he's out here with his giant ugly face and his crooked nose telling all of us with his deviated septum. I'm not even sure he can breathe out of both of his nostrils. And he's out here telling all of us that maybe Celeste overdosed. Maybe Celeste drank, and had an alcohol problem. Maybe David didn't have anything to do with it, this, that, and the other. And it's like, sure, maybe. But it's not fair that these propagandists have access to this information that we don't have access to. Then they start doing an inquisition at the medical examiner's office. There was a whole investigation into who was leaking stuff, all because they were trying to keep stuff hidden from the public. So finally, in April of this year, David gets arrested, and there was drama with that too, because he got arrested by the police on a Thursday afternoon. Now, in LA, there's every jurisdiction in the country, the prosecutors only have a certain amount of time to bring charges against you if you get arrested, or else they have to let you go. In LA, I think it's 48 or 72 hours. I don't actually remember. Whatever the case it is, they add extra time if you get arrested right before a weekend. So it's like business days. So David's in jail for like over the weekend, and then they're going to bring him in court on a Monday to have his arraignment, to see if the prosecutors are going to, pursue charges or not and all that. So he gets arrested, but then again, Mark Garagos and Harvey Levin, who's in the Epstein files as a propagandist, they're talking the whole weekend. They're like, this was so messed up. The prosecutor's not even ready to bring this case. The cops basically went around the prosecutor. The cops basically went over the head of the prosecutors. And so the cops are tired of getting criticism. LAPD is sick and tired of being criticized over this case. And so for that reason, 48 hours. Thank you, Jody. And for that reason, yeah, there's that whole Neo thing. I skipped that too. So Mark Garagos and Harvey Levin are like, the prosecutor's possibly not going to decide to bring these charges against David because the prosecutor's not ready. The cops are the ones who went to arrest David. They didn't check in with the prosecutors. There's no charges filed as of yet. And so the prosecutors better, make a move, or else they're going to have to let him go. So Monday rolls around, and we do see that the prosecutors do decide to charge him. So at that point, it's, he's in the system. I don't think he's been let out since. This is all from my memory, by the way. I have no notes up right now. I'm just kind of like going over the things I find important to mention right now. But I want to really highlight through all of this, the lack of transparency in general, but also the specific intention to keep things private, like going out of their way to block stuff from the public that's supposed to be public. Some things, and I've said this before when I was covering it in real time, some things are necessary to be not public for a while. That I understand. But the cause of death seems like something that should have been able to come out, because all the while there was all this, truly propaganda being spread by people who are close to Blair Burke, people who have a working relationship with Blair Burke, which is David's lawyer. And they basically, the propagandists, specifically Mark Garagos and Harvey Levin, they're pretty much like trying to make the public think that the coroner, the medical examiner, the cops, and the prosecutor are all against each other. And they're all having this like sort of internal, battle amongst each other. The cops are mad at the prosecutors because the prosecutors wouldn't charge. The prosecutors are mad at the coroner because the coroner wanted to release the medical records, but the prosecutor and the cops are on the same side on that. They don't want the the autopsy report to come out. And so it's kind of like being built up like, oh yeah, there's this internal agency, like ego battle, da-da-da-da-da. Well, it ended up not actually mattering or being material as far as all of that, because they are now bringing the case. So then that brings us to the grand jury. Probably last year in like November, December, maybe it was earlier this year, February. I really don't remember what it's time. But at some point several months ago, we end up finding out that there's a grand jury in this case. A grand jury had been convened in LA, and they were hearing evidence. They were hearing testimony. People were being subpoenaed. David's, by all accounts, best friend, Neo, the Asian is his online name. Neo, he's arrested at his mama's house in Montana and extradited to LA to go and testify before the grand jury. And there was video of him walking in. There was video of him walking out. He did not stay in there very long. I think it was less than 2 hours. And so somebody to be the best friend, I mean, he really wasn't in there long. And then that led people to start asking, did he get immunity? Did he get up there and say, I plead the fifth? I ain't saying nothing. Other things start happening or whatever. Well, that was all before David was arrested. So then David gets arrested. David's now, in jail, being held in jail or whatever. And then they have their first hearing. Actually, I don't know if it's the first one or not, but there have probably been about a half dozen hearings so far. Most of them end up being, hey, we all need more time. That's the TLDR. But in one of those very early on hearings back in the spring, Blair Burke, probably thinking the same thing as the propagandist, Mark Garagos and Harvey Levin at TMZ, probably thinking that the prosecutors aren't really ready to bring this case against David. David's lawyers start saying, we're ready for the preliminary hearing now. This is back in the spring, like earlier, like months ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. They were like, we're ready. We want this preliminary hearing. We want to see the evidence in the light of day. This grand jury was so secretive, and David's lawyers are like, we want the evidence out now. We want to see it. So the judge is like, okay, fine. We'll schedule the preliminary hearing. So they scheduled the next date, a week from then or whatever. Well, by the time that next hearing rolled around, David's lawyers had been able to now see some of the evidence. And it included child you-know-what type of videos. Allegedly. I didn't see them. Hope I never do. But that's the allegation, is that there's child you-know-what charges. There was other stuff that they were going to be bringing. Not charges, not charges for the child you-know-what images or videos or whatever. But that David had a S relationship with Celeste, allegedly, that David had unalived her. There was all this evidence, 10 terabytes. And so then David's lawyers no longer were like, oh, let's, 40 terabytes. Yeah, 40 terabytes. And so David's lawyers were then like, well, shit. I mean, obviously we're not going to be ready to do this in 2 days or whatever. So we want to push it back now. So then that leads to the pushing it down the road game that they've been playing for the last several months. So that all led us to Tuesday, the day before yesterday. Actually, let's start Monday, the first day this week, Monday. The coroner comes out, medical examiner, comes out and does an exclusive interview with AP, the Associated Press. And he's basically dragging the LAPD. He's basically dragging the DA. And he's saying, yeah, this case needed more transparency from the beginning. He said, I knew pretty much immediately when I looked at the remains how she died. I knew, because I'm an expert, it was stabs. That's how she died. It wasn't alcohol this, it wasn't drugs that. He said, of course, we always have to send off toxicology testing stuff. We always have to have stuff tested for drugs, and we have to rule everything out. Of course we have to do that. But being in his line of work for the amount of time he's been in it and the level of expertise and experience he has, he's like, I knew what it was. So I had to sit here idly by while there were, sources from LAPD and sources from this, that, and the other being cited in the news. And it was just not at all what had happened. And I knew it and I couldn't say anything. The coroner came out and he's basically saying, I didn't like how it couldn't be transparent in this case. It was messed up. And he said it was unfathomable to him that not only did the public have to wait so long for answers, but Celeste Rivas Hernandez's parents didn't even know her cause of death. He couldn't even tell them. He couldn't even tell them her cause of death. And he said it's unfathomable that parents of a child would find out at the same time as the public in the way that they found out. It's unfathomable. And it's not right. And that's not how it should happen. We need more transparency. That's what the coroner, the medical examiner said. This week. That was Monday, the day before the preliminary hearing starts. So finally, they can't push it off no more. They can't do anything that now it's got to happen. So they come on Tuesday, day before yesterday, for day one of the hearing. Now, there's no cameras allowed in the courtroom, for one. There's no live tweeting or live reporting allowed in the courtroom. Because usually if they don't have a camera in the courtroom, like for example, in the Southern District of New York, no cameras are allowed in federal court, ever. Any cameras. No cameras allowed. However, because the Southern District of New York is probably the second most high profile court in the whole country, other than, LA courts, the judges do allow certain press members to at least, which I don't think is good enough. I think cameras need to be in every courtroom, but I'm not even here to talk about that at this point. At least the court will allow a certain few designated reporters in the Southern District of New York, for example, to basically live tweet or live report. So this is how we covered the Diddy trial. I would start on, 9 o'clock in the morning, put a 2 in the chat if you were here for the Diddy trial. Start in the morning, and I would have 5 tabs, 10 tabs open, and it would be like people live. One guy I really like, he's in every single one of my description boxes. His name's Matthew Russell Lee for Inner City Press. He's one of my 3 Patreon subscriptions. He is an American hero. He goes in there, and it's not just the high profile cases. I mean, if you go on his Twitter any given day, he is live tweeting a case over there, either in the Southern District or in New York in general, like state courts. So we would get on here. I would read his tweets. I would read, the New York Times would be posting kind of live updates. Every 5 to 10 minutes, they'd post an update about what was going on in the Diddy trial. We'd be on CNN. We'd be on NBC. We'd be on a New York Post. And we would just read source after source after source of what they were seeing going on in the courtroom to try to keep up with what's going on in real time in the Diddy trial. So in this case, this preliminary hearing for David, there's no cameras allowed in the courtroom. There's no live audio coming out of the courtroom. And they're not allowed to do that where they're live tweeting out of it. Like, you're not even really supposed to have a lot of laptops in there. Only a few people are permitted a special treatment to get laptops. And I've been in and out of these LA courts before as a spectator or a member of the public. I went many times not many, maybe 5, 6 times for Britney Spears hearings. And it has always been difficult to get a spot in the room. It's always been difficult. The last Britney hearing I went to, I think I got out there about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the courthouse doesn't open the doors till like 8:30, and then the court doesn't start, or 8 o'clock maybe, and the court doesn't start till like 9 or 9:30. So it's like a full work day of just standing there in line to try to get a spot. And, this happens every time I try to go to court. I'm like, honestly, I don't even really want to try to go to courts anymore. Southern District of New York, the same thing. You got to get out there and get in line. In New York, they have these freaking weird ass line holders, which I'm not even going to get into. But it's really hard to get a spot in the courtroom. Well, again, like in New York, if you don't get a spot in the room where Diddy is, they have what's called an overflow room. An overflow room. It's literally another courtroom that's just not having court in it. It's a courtroom, and they have these, I know they're weird, I know. And they have these TVs, like 60-inch or whatever, 2 TVs set up, and they have cameras that are basically doing a live feed from the court where Diddy was in to the courtroom, next door or downstairs or whatever. So if you couldn't get a spot in the Diddy courtroom, at the very least, you could sit there and watch a live stream of it in the courthouse where it's happening, in a courtroom. Now, they did not make this live feed available to the public, which I had issues with. I think, if a hearing's supposed to be public, it should be public. But at the very least, if you got your ass up and went into that if you got your ass up and went into that courthouse in the Southern District of New York, at one point, I think they had 3 overflow rooms because there were hundreds of people who were interested in seeing and hearing the case. It was a matter of huge, huge public significance and importance. And so there's these overflow rooms. So is it as good as being able to look at the jury and look at Diddy and, be in the room and see the judge? Of course not. Of course it's not as good, but at least there's something. Well, guess what? In the David case, there's no overflow room. There's no overflow room. It's one little courtroom, and you got to get in line to get in the courtroom. But that's not all. There's no overflow room. And I know this from the Britney case. They would give 10 tickets out. Sometimes they would give 11. And you had to be one of the first people in line, one of the first 11 people to line up and get a ticket. And they would give you a physical ticket like you were at a raffle, like a lottery or something. You have to hold your ticket. And if you lose your ticket, you lose your spot. So that's kind of how they're doing it in the David case, except they've added another layer of complication, which is it's not just the first 10 members of the public who get there anymore. 10 seats are given to the public. 10. There's no overflow room. There's no cameras in the courtroom. And there's 10 lucky people who get to be in the courtroom each day. Now, there's other seats allotted to the media. We'll get to that in a moment. But for the purposes of going to see the trial, for the David trial, pretty much if you're just a regular person, a regular member of the public, you have 10 spots. And all the thousands of people who want to see this trial, and of the dozens of people who could actually take the time off of work or who could somehow make it down to the court and all of that, if you're in that very privileged, position to be able to do that and then get there in line, and then now if you get there, you get a ticket, and then they put all the tickets in a raffle drum and they turn what is this, Kill Tony? Like, what in the lottery hell? And they turn the drum and then they call out whose number, and it's like a raffle. And apparently now it's like turned into a circus where it's like when they call someone's number, there's cheering and applauding and gasping, and it's like, this is a circus. This is not supposed to be how court works. It's just very weird. So court is supposed to be public, especially when it's a matter of public concern. These criminal trials are supposed to be public. I do understand, and actually I agree, that not every single piece of evidence in a case needs to be public, especially if it's something like mutilated bodies or child, material or whatever. Like, I don't think that that's good to unleash upon the public. I don't think every exhibit needs to be public, especially when it's like so graphic and stuff like that. Like, it can mess you up mentally, physically, even, to see that. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I don't think every single piece of evidence needs to be public, but I absolutely think that trials and hearings like this should be public. And I just want to remind you, David's stage name D4VD was the most Googled person in the world last year. So the public interest is there. So no cameras, no overflow room, no live broadcasting, no live tweeting, no laptops allowed for the most part. People aren't allowed to have their phones. And there's only 10 seats for the public. Now, there are other seats. And if it's the same size of a courtroom as the one in Brittany hearings, there would be 10 seats for the public. And guess how many the media would get? Allotted, saved for them. 60. For every one member of the public, 6 media representatives. Why? Why do they get so much more privilege? At the very least, could it be half and half? And the media people could sign up early. They didn't have to have their ass out there in the morning like the people. They got special treatment, and the people got discriminated against. Actually, the first time I ever was harassed at a courthouse was in LA, where this David trial is happening, or hearing is happening. The first time I ever got harassed at a courthouse, it was Chloe Malos's bodyguard. And he was acting like a Scientologist, if you ask me. I mean, the video of it is still up on my Instagram. But he was telling me I needed to move. Remember, I told you I had to get there at 3 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. I had to stand there all day, or sit, or stand. That was my spot. And somebody from the media came up to me and my fiance and said, "Can you guys move? Because we're trying to get a shot at the front of the courthouse." I said, "No, we cannot move because y'all have special seats reserved for you and we have to stand in line. So this is what it looks like at the courthouse right now. There's people here. The people have to actually come out here and slave away for a whole shift in the hot ass, muggy ass LA summer or whatever, just to get a spot that we're supposed to be entitled to. If you want to give me your spot in the courtroom, I'll move." What do you think he said? Never mind. Then guess what happened? They sent over an allied security guard who was trying to LARP as a cop to confront my fiance. The allied security guard walks up to my fiance and says, "Hey, would you mind just moving? The news is trying to get their shots." My fiance said, "No, it is my right to stand here and they can get the shot with me in it. I'm not moving." And it wasn't like we were not trying to be belligerent. It would be much better if we could be in our bed at 3:30 in the morning. It would be much better if even there was like some type of overflow room, or even better than that, a live stream. And these are the problems that we have to deal with when it comes to transparency. There's 60 seats pre-saved, pre-reserved for the media. And we already talked about what the media does. They don't even need a goddamn beat in there. They get their news straight from Blair Burke and the rest of the team over there anyway, half the time. So they don't even need to be in there. Nobody is telling me what's going on in the courtroom. I can tell you that. So that's what's going on in this David case. So no cameras, no live tweeting, no laptops, no phones, no live reporting. Only 10 seats for the public, and it's not even like, okay, the first 10 people to line up. It's just literally a crapshoot. If you're not one of those 10 people, fuck you. It's kind of like, where's the transparency here? So there's one final bastion, one final beacon of transparency that we can fall back on. Just one. Well, two. I'll say two. One of them is obvious by virtue of all the things I just said. It's people are reporting. So mainstream news is reporting, but so is new media. We have vloggers, we have bloggers, we have people with YouTube channels, YouTubers, we have quasi-YouTuber, quasi-journalists. I mean, we have all kind of people, independent journalists who are doing the hard work of going and dealing with all of this stress, going and dealing with these lotteries, standing in the lines, taking the notes, sweating through their clothes. I mean, it is hot in LA right now. And it's especially hot in these cities because these concrete buildings are like ovens. So it's just, I mean, it's labor. It's labor to go there. And then you're looking at pictures of corpses. I mean, it's bad. So if you have the time, the energy, and the ability to sit there and listen to hours and hours of people's live streams and, you know, read the different news articles that come out, you can kind of start to piece together a picture of what's going on in the courtroom. That's one way that we're able to still kind of get some indication of what's going on. And another way, another little final last little bastion of hope, little beacon of transparency, is all of this stuff is recorded in writing by a court reporter. These are called the transcripts, the hearing transcripts. And there's a person there who's like specially trained on a special type of typewriter to type really, really fast and get down everything that's said in court. Those transcripts are public. Are they free? No. Should they be? I think so. They cost money. They often take time to get. If you want to get them on the regular timeline, I think it's like 10 days. It takes like 10 days to get them. You could pay more money to get them quickly. And that's pretty much the last hope that we have to know what went on in the hearings. And especially when there's no cameras, no live tweeting, you know, stuff like that. Now, they are allowed to write notes on paper. That's, you know, what a lot of people are coming out of the courtroom. They have their notebooks and they're telling us, you know, Armand Wiggins, Trap Lord Ross, Mark the Shark, FloJo TV. They're in there with their notebooks. They're writing notes. That's fine. That's cool. Thank God for them because they're in there telling us what's going on. Well, Rabbit, Down the Rabbit Hole News, she was in the music video that I put up at the beginning. Down the Rabbit Hole News requested the transcripts for day one. And I do have the first day transcript. So we, you know, spoiler alert, we're going to read that today, eventually. But she requested the transcripts for day one. She got them. Great. Wonderful. Awesome. Yesterday, and she streamed for like 10 and a half hours on Tuesday. She streamed the whole day. She had panels. She had people come on. Steve Fischer came on. And yesterday, she went to go and do the same thing again. You know, get the transcripts from yesterday. Yesterday was day two. She was informed Beth Silverman, the prosecutor, had said, nobody else can get transcripts. Now, that's not up to Beth Silverman, by the way. She's not the boss of the courtroom. She's trying to act like she is, but she's not the fucking boss. And she's already faced a lot of criticism in this case. Like I mentioned earlier, she took forever and a half to prosecute. She didn't even file charges here. And she's just the deputy district attorney, by the way. She's not like the main district attorney. The main district attorney, his name is Nathan Hochman. And we saw a video of him on the other live that I did about this the other night. But he's like the main boss. But Beth is very high up. Like she's been a prosecutor for a long time in LA and she has a lot of power. She has a lot of authority and she's the main lead prosecutor on this case, the David case. So on Monday, Steve Fischer. Remember I told y'all, put 3 in the chat. You remember who that is? SF Investigates got in today. Good. So he got in today. He'll be doing some reporting as well, I'm sure. Steve Fischer was in the hallway, or, I don't exactly know. I wasn't there. This is like, fifth hand information at this point. He talked about it on Rabbit's stream, but he was like in a common area of the courthouse, like the hallway or the lobby or something. And Celeste, the victim, Celeste Rivas Hernandez's parents have a lawyer there. They're probably going to sue David for wrongful death or whatever. So the parents have been coming every day to the preliminary hearing and looking at all this gruesome and grotesque stuff. They've been crying. They've been, they've been out here, and, my heart goes out to them. They have their own lawyer. And also I would get a lawyer too, even if I wasn't planning on suing them, because you don't know what crooked Beth Silverman's going to try to pin on somebody. You're like, shh, I ain't talking to nobody without a lawyer. Somebody dead. Because, it ain't nothing to start blaming parents. And maybe it is their fault. Maybe they should have known where their 14-year-old was. But I don't think they sought her up. So they have their own lawyer. I don't remember his name. Seinfeld or something. He's there at the courthouse Monday, too. He walks up to Steve Fischer. Introduces himself. He's like, hey, Steve Fischer. Nice to meet you. Steve had no idea who this man was. He didn't know who it was. Hey, nice to meet you. Who are you? And the guy's like, oh, I'm the family attorney for Celeste, Jesus Rivas, and for Martinez is her last name. What's her name? Melody, Melinda, Melissa. I don't remember her name. But she, the parents. Celeste Rivas Hernandez's parents. He said, I'm their lawyer. And Steve Fischer was a little bit taken aback that this lawyer would be coming to talk to him, because Steve Fischer has kind of criticized. Steve Fischer has criticized Celeste Rivas Hernandez's parents. Asked really good questions. Why didn't they know where she was? Why didn't they report her found at any point? Because technically when she died, she was still a missing child. Like, she was still missing technically, but there's evidence to support that she wasn't actually missing. Like, her parents did know where she was. So Steve Fischer has kind of called out the parents. Steve Fischer has kind of called out the cousin, Celeste Rivas' first cousin or whatever, for their knowledge. There's plenty of blame to go around, I will say. He's wanted more answers from the parents, to say the least. Mercedes. Thank you. Mercedes is her name. So Tuesday, the first day, preliminary hearing day 1, the Rivas Hernandez family attorney comes up to Steve Fischer. He's surprised that he would be approached like this, especially in like a collegial, cordial, kind of nice way. And the family attorney thanks him. Thank you so much for keeping this story alive. Thank you so much for continuing to bring light to this story and to ask for answers and justice. He thanked him. And Steve was surprised, but he even retelling the story, he became emotional. His voice started to crack. Later that night, he did a live. He attended a panel live on Down the Rabbit Hole News, and his voice started to crack, and he was like emotional about it, because he puts his heart into these cases. He definitely put his heart into this one. And anyway, so he's talking to this lawyer in the hall or in the lobby or whatever on Tuesday. Kind of surprised, kind of taken aback, didn't even know who he was at first, all that. And in the middle of this sort of sweet, like, heart-to-heart, Beth Silverman, the prosecutor, who, again, did not bring charges until David was arrested, interferes in the conversation, grabs the family attorney, physically grabs him, pulls him, and says, "Don't talk to him," meaning Steve Fischer, the private investigator. Don't talk to him. You're not allowed to talk to him. Again, Beth fucking Silverman has absolutely no right to tell two grown men who they can talk to and who they can't. Okay. She has tried throughout the entirety of this case to silence Steve Fischer. Rewind to several months ago when the grand jury hearings were going on. These are traditionally very secretive. But the people who are really bound to secrecy are the people who are, putting the thing on. You're really bound to secrecy on something you learned from the grand jury proceeding. You are not bound to secrecy on whether or not you were there or whether or not you had testified. You're allowed to say, I was a witness in the grand jury. I'm not allowed to say anything I learned there. But remember, Steve Fischer already was an investigator on this case. He knew more than the freaking police. He had that camera. God knows what else he had. Some of the things, I mean, I'm not going to say like he knew more than the police in general, but he had some information even the police did not have because they didn't pull all of the stuff that was obviously relevant from David's apartment or his house that he was renting. So Steve Fischer already knew stuff. He had probably learned some things in that grand jury hearing or the grand jury proceedings, but he already knew things that the public didn't know, that he didn't learn at the grand jury. He already knew it. So after he testified to the grand jury, Beth Silverman walks up to him and she's like, you know, you're not allowed to talk about this at all. And if you even say that you were here, you could be convicted or you could be charged with a crime. And Steve was like, that kind of made him a little bit nervous. But then he talked to lawyers or whatever and confirmed that's not true. So she's threatening him. Then Steve Fischer is over there at the courthouse one day and some random, I think it was a cop, walks up to Steve Fischer with like a handwritten note on the back of a receipt or something. Like a handwritten, scribbled out with a pen, like ink pen note. And hands him a note like this is the freaking mafia. And he looks at the note and it's written out like it's supposed to be some type of subpoena on a handwritten note on it, like the back of a receipt or something. So Steve Fischer's like, okay, this is weird. First of all, I've been falsely threatened that I'm not allowed to talk about this when obviously I am. And this is, again, y'all, this is months ago. This wasn't recent. This was months ago. But like, this is all like coming from Beth Silverman trying to silence Steve Fischer. And then the first day of the preliminary hearing finally rolls around this week. And she physically, I mean, I would say that's a battery, an unwanted physical contact, which would lead someone to be in reasonable apprehension for their safety. Don't fucking touch me. I'm going to tell you that. Do not touch me. Ho ho, don't put your talons on me, bitch. Don't do it. She grabs this family attorney. You're not allowed to talk to him. After already threatening Steve Fischer with a crime, after already trying to subpoena him with the scribble scratch on the back of a receipt. And now, yesterday, Beth Silverman decided, even though it's not her authority to do so, none of us get to see the transcripts. So tell me, where is the transparency? And what is Beth Silverman trying to hide? I'm not asking to see child you-know-what images. Please, God, no. Keep that on a hard drive over there. I'm not asking to see a garbage bag full of chopped off limbs. I don't want to see that. But now we can't even see the transcripts till this whole thing is over? What? Where's the transparency here? Courts are public. They got 10 seats for the public, if you're lucky, and that's, you got to get there, and then they're going to do the drum roll. There's no live tweeting, no live reporting. 60 people from the media. Beth Silverman's there telling people who they can and can't talk to. Like, on the one hand, I'm happy that Beth Silverman is prosecuting someone here, but it's almost like maybe her friend Morgan Roth or something is like perhaps more involved than she wants to admit. Maybe they're just trying to open and close this up and pin it all on David when maybe it was a whole team effort. Maybe she's crooked. Maybe she's paid off. But she did not even bring these charges. The prosecutor's office did not bring these charges until after David got arrested by the police. They basically, their hand was forced. They've now tried to keep the autopsy report and successfully kept the autopsy report hidden for months and months and months after it should have been. They have attacked and targeted whistleblowers. It's like Beth is now trying to interfere with people. It's almost like what she doesn't want Steve Fischer to tell the family what he knows. She's trying to keep information from them. Why in the fuck is that crazy bitch telling people who they can and can't talk to? It's giving Big Beth, Big Karen energy. Let me show you what Brian Enton said about this lottery system. I put this in my notes as Hunger Games for court. It's a Hunger Games at the courthouse. He said this yesterday. He said, the lottery system for getting into the David hearing is odd. You get your ticket, and then they put it into a metal drum, and they mix them all around. And then they draw the, quote, winners. There's only 10 seats or so. I got in again today. This was for day 2, yesterday. He said, I got in again today, which I wasn't expecting, but people like cheer and gasp. It's odd. Yeah, it reminds me of that. Yeah, did y'all ever read The Lottery in middle school in one of those Ghislaine Maxwell Daddy books? Like, they draw a lottery and whoever wins get killed. like it's like we're in the end times or what? And this is all fine and good if you just want to, be in the courtroom, but there's no overflow room. There's no live tweeting. It's just all so very odd. It's not first come, first serve. It's not. No one is a winner in this situation, actually. Seriously. Thank you, Nikki, for being a member for 3 months. Damn, I'm going to have to jump between you and Rabbit. Yes, shout out to Rabbit. And we're going to be definitely probably covering like different stuff at different times too. But shout out to her. She's doing great coverage. Thank you, Edie, becoming a new member. Thank you for the clapping seal. If David had help, he would have done it smarter. Maybe. Thank you, Dr. Tarantism, for the $2 Australian. Maybe he would have done it smarter if he had help, or maybe he's surrounded by buffoon idiots. There's a lot of stupid people out here in the world. There's a lot of stupid people. Look at the McNeffs. It's like they just do stupid, belligerent stuff for so long, and then finally one day they get caught. Thank you so much. And I don't necessarily know, too, if he had help. I think he probably did. But I think he probably, if he didn't have help, I feel like somebody knew something. And that's what they started getting into yesterday in the evidence. Thank you, PK, for the 10 gems and for the 10 gems. Thank you to Maggie for the 25, another ceramics class, another live instead of talking to people. Thanks, BJ. Super sad, though. We shouldn't meet here at all. This should not have happened. Exactly. Thank you, Sewed Freak, for the Sunday. Thank you, Edie, for the makeup brush. Thank you, Strange Currencies, for the floating heart. Thank you, Jax, for the 2 gems. Thank you, Bexy Star, for the 2 gems. And the 2 gems again. Thank you, Christy Perez. Yes, the system's only weapon is fear. Usually baseless fear. Yeah, you got to threaten us. Got to threaten us and tell us what to do in the process. You got to tell us what to do. The Beth Silvermans of the world just cannot handle not being in control. And it sucks. Because I want the person who's prosecuting, I want to be on her side. I want to be Stan. Oh, yes, Stan, she's an icon, a legend, the queen, the moment. I want to cheer for her. I want to. She's prosecuting David, finally. But I don't get the sense she's really trying to get justice for Celeste. If she was trying to get justice for Celeste, why wouldn't she let Celeste's family attorney talk to whoever in the hell he wants to? She grabbed him with her talons and snatched him and said, you're not allowed to talk to Steve Fischer. And this happened publicly. Pete, there were witnesses. Thank you so much to Kirsty, again, for the $5 super chat. Justice for celestial justice. For us all. Yes, we need to go to the celestial kingdom with justice or whatever. We are all vulnerable children once and at the mercy of unsafe people, period. I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to this case. Okay. So, she's just trying to have control over the case. Yeah, she's a control freak, for sure. Pretty Glitchy said, unless he had a gore bestie to get freak with, I don't think he needed help. Right. So I have a few things that I want to go over with y'all about. Now, I've done a day one live stream, and on That Surprise Witness, I put out a couple videos I put one video out kind of recapping day one. And that was like a 24-minute video. And then I also put a video out about the medical examiner and his statement about needing more transparency and things like that. So that was after I had watched like a bunch of streams That was after I'd watched a bunch of streams. I had read a bunch of articles, things like that. I was able to put together like a day one high points. Now, yesterday was day two, and apparently the main majority of yesterday was focused on finances. The reason it was focused on finances is because so David's being charged with technically three charges. One charge is inappropriate relations with a minor. One charge is the unaliving, and then one charge is the cover up, the hiding it and all of that. So on the second charge, the unaliving itself, David is being accused of three special circumstances. So these are things that will make him eligible for more punishment, basically. And the special circumstances are lying in wait, financial gain, and trying to eliminate somebody that would be a witness in a criminal investigation. So the special circumstance of lying in wait means the prosecutors are alleging that David lured Celeste to his house under false pretenses. So like, come to my house, we'll make up. Come to my house, we'll, do a live stream. And then she gets to the house, he kills her. So that would be the special circumstance, lying in wait. The special circumstance for financial gain is like David killed her, this is the allegation, to save his ass financially, to avoid a financial loss. He was going to make money in some way or on something, and Celeste was going to cause him to lose money, so he had to kill her. And then the third special circumstance is David was potentially under investigation for harboring a minor already. And Celeste, according to prosecutors, told David she was going to pretty much snitch. Celeste told David, I'm sick of you leading me on. This is obviously paraphrased. I didn't read the text messages. This is kind of how the prosecutors framed it. They were like, I'm sick of you cheating on me and leading me on. All we ever do is hang out and have relations. Celeste was starting to become, I think, aware that she was being used and taken advantage of and manipulated. And so she said, look, if you keep doing this to me, I'm telling on you. And your whole music career is going to be over. Now, that's what the prosecutors claim. The prosecutors claim that Celeste threatened David to tell on him and end his music career. So those are the special circumstances: lying in wait, financial gain, and killing somebody that was going to be a witness against you in a criminal investigation. And those special circumstances are not necessary to prove. They're necessary to prove for the special circumstance, but they can prove, the prosecutors could easily prove, or I don't know about easily, but ostensibly it could be proven that he unalived somebody. Heat of passion, heat of the moment. It's just these special circumstances basically make it more severe of a punishment he could be eligible for, and it brings it up to like death penalty level. So a big part of David's lawyer's jobs is going to be to try to eliminate the special circumstances, so they can make it seem like even if he did kill her, it was a heat of the moment. He didn't pre-plan it. He was on drug, whatever. Like a big part of their job is going to be that. So yesterday, the prosecutors were trying to lay out for the judge, look at all the financial opportunities that David had to lose. Look at how much money was coming in off this music career. And if Celeste really was going to expose him, he was going to lose all this money. So yesterday was really focused on money. The first day, Tuesday, was really focused on the finding of the body, where it was, how it was there, the description of it, the pictures of it they put up on the screen for everyone to see in the courtroom, the maggots, the flies, the coroner. The coroner hasn't testified yet. Apparently that's going to be happening today. Now, it is 12:21 Eastern, so that means it's 9:21 over there. So the court just started today. I don't even know if they even actually started yet, because there's always that little buffer time in the morning. Let me see. 40 minutes ago, yeah. So here's like a CBS article from 40 minutes ago. I thought we could just kind of catch up with what a high level overview of what's kind of happened in court so far. Because today I want to read the transcript from day one. Because if they're not going to let us see it on the TV or on the live stream, if they're not going to let people live tweet it, and if we're going to have to run all over the place and try to track this thing down, and now they're not going to let us have the transcripts for the other days until after the whole thing's over, I'm definitely going to be reading. Oh, Beth, baby girl, I cleared my schedule to read this transcript. Not really. I got to go to the dentist later, but in the meantime, let's catch up with a general overview of what's happened on the first 2 days of the preliminary hearing, and then that's going to prepare us to possibly circle back to the day 1 transcript, and also to be primed for if there are any updates, any breaking news updates from today, day 3, which I think is going to be a little bit more of a sort of explosive day than yesterday was. Yesterday was kind of finances. They have to prove this financial motive. We'll be primed and ready. So it says David hearing enters day 3. Here's what prosecutors have presented in the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. Preliminary hearing in the murder case against David will enter day 3 today after days of prosecutors calling several witnesses and presenting key evidence in the killing. Over the past couple days, prosecutors from LA District Attorney's Office have called a long list of witnesses to testify, including investigators, law enforcement officers, and people who worked with David. The 21-year-old is charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances, lewd and lascivious acts with an individual under 14, and mutilating a body, right? So those are the 3 charges. Murder with the 3 special circumstances, lewd acts with a kid, and body mutilation. Prosecutors have focused on the amount of money David was making, evidence found at the Hollywood tow yard, and his relationship with Celeste. Celeste's family has been present in the courtroom during the hearing, often heard crying and seen getting emotional when graphic images or details are explained about the killing. Prosecutors will continue presenting evidence today before the judge makes a decision on whether there's enough probable cause to proceed to a trial. Remember, this is not a guilty or not guilty that the judge is going to be deciding. This is there enough evidence against David for this to move forward? Investigators found traces of blood. Lauren Wallace, who is a criminalist for the LAPD, said that she was part of the scene examination of the garage at David's home. So we did see investigators going in and out of his home. So now we're hearing one of these people was Lauren Wallace. This was in September when they did the garage examination. She testified she found 2 chainsaws, and she said they both tested negative for blood. She said she found garage mats, a rowing machine, and a Tesla charging cord that all had red stains on them. She explained to the court that she used a Blue Star spray. I think that's like what they call luminol. It's a highly sensitive luminol-based forensic spray used to detect blood that may not be seen by the naked eye. She said all 3 items tested positive for blood. So what had blood on it for sure? The Tesla charging cord, some mats from the garage, and a rowing machine. However, the 2 chainsaws that were left behind at David's house in the garage did not have blood on them. She said all 3 items. Okay. She testified that a black trash bag, wipes found inside the trash bag, and tarps also tested positive for blood. So there's blood all over the place in this garage. She found a blue inflatable pool that was found crumbled in a ball. She testified it smelled like fresh laundry. Although it didn't have any obvious signs of stains, it still tested positive for blood. So that's another thing too. Like, you could wash the blood off, but there's still going to be like trace blood on there that this luminol stuff will illuminate. Air fresheners. Okay, this was probably the biggest news that came out yesterday. Was there were like 11 freaking air fresheners in David's Tesla. During yesterday's hearing, Chelsea Murillo, a criminalist for the LAPD, she said she responded to the Hollywood tow yard. Okay, so she was at the tow yard, not the garage. She said Celeste's remains were discovered. So she went to the tow yard. She testified she was involved in processing the scene and preserving the evidence from the Tesla. She said by the time she arrived, the remains had already been transported by the medical examiner, but she did notice an odor coming from the front trunk that resembled the odor from a decomposing body. She said she began to examine the car. She found 11 air fresheners in the front trunk, in the center console, and in the door pockets. She observed flies and maggots in the front trunk. Ugh. On the first day of the hearing, prosecutors called Joshua Byers, the LAPD detective, responded to the tow yard. He had responded to the scene for a death investigation about a body found in a car. When he arrived at the scene, he opened the front trunk. He found partially opened black body bag. Now, this part's interesting. Why was it partially opened? Because he had to get a search warrant to open the trunk. So the person who went through all this trouble of putting the body in there didn't zip the bag. The torso and the head were inside. He described in detail how he found the remains in several bags, or two actually. He said after moving the bag, he found another plastic trash bag with the severed limbs inside. That is yucky. Now, Beth Silverman, lead hiding evidence from the public in chief, presented several graphic images to the court of the bags. Byers said there was quite a bit of decomposition and he could not make out facial features. She was unrecognizable. So I have a few other links before we get to that transcript, and I am going to be checking in periodically with new updates that are happening actually today, because today's day 3. Let's start here. David's financial manager was called to the stand, a man by the name of Benjamin Greger. Benjamin Greger, he spilled some tea. He spilled some tea. No, the tow yard people did not open it, supposedly. They smelled the smell and called the cops, supposedly. Shout out to Kadisha Lynn. She was reporting and is reporting. I don't think she's there on the scene, but she's kind of like in real time providing some updates of things that happen. And she's definitely a friend of the channel. Love her stuff. She definitely, want to give her a like. She definitely keeps us updated. Okay, so the title of the video she put out, I think this came out yesterday or early this morning. David's finance manager lied about asking questions. David's financial manager lied about asking what happened to Celeste.
David's financial manager lied to the grand jury about asking what happened to Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Oh, this is the financial manager that works for Mogul Vision, David's financial manager. And David also has a day-to-day manager, Robert Morganroth, who also works under Mogul Vision. And I'm about to read you these transcripts from yesterday and listen to how crazy this is. One reason why I called this guy out for being sketchy. Prosecutor.
So she said, I'm going to let you listen to this from yesterday, but this is the day 1 hearing transcripts.
Start asking him, well, didn't you say that you didn't ask questions because you didn't want to know, talking about what happened to Celeste Rivas?
Okay, so this is the financial manager being asked questions by the prosecutor. This was questions asked on Tuesday. Beth Silverman said, when you said at the grand jury, you didn't ask Rob. Rob was the day-to-day manager for David, Robert Morganroth. So when you didn't ask, you say you didn't ask Rob any questions because you didn't want to know. Is that true? He said, no, that's not true. So, okay. So put another way. This financial manager was called before the grand jury months ago. At the grand jury, he was asked the question, what happened to Celeste? Did you ever ask anybody what happened to Celeste? Did you ever ask the day-to-day manager, your buddy Rob, you ever asked him what happened to Celeste? He said, nope, didn't want to know. I didn't want to know what happened to Celeste. I didn't ask. Well, now he's basically asked the same question on the stand a few days ago, and he changed his answer. He said that was a lie. I lied on the stand before. I said before, I didn't want to know what happened to Celeste, but come to find out he did want to know what happened to Celeste, and he did indeed and in fact ask about it.
Hernandez, he said, I recall portions of that, yeah. Then they say, is that true, or is your testimony today true? He said, I'd say my testimony today is true. Okay, so when you said at the grand jury that you didn't ask Rob any questions because you didn't want to know, that would be incorrect? I'd say that's not correct, yeah. Okay, so what question?
So what she just said is like a different paraphrase of, like, you know, what I just said. It was like he basically lied to the grand jury. He said no. He said no. I didn't ask about it. I didn't want to know. I don't know anything. I don't know nothing. Come to find out that wasn't true. He was asking people. He wanted to know. He wanted the tea.
And did you ask Rob about the details? He said, I asked Rob plainly what had happened. What did he tell you? He did tell me yes.
What the hell? What did he tell you? Okay, all right. Great. Got it. Ben, so you asked Rob, you asked the day-to-day manager about Celeste. Got it. So that's your story now? Yes? Okay, cool. What did you ask him? What exactly did you ask him? He said, well, I asked him plainly, what happened? What happened to what happened? And prosecutor Beth Silverman, the one who's keeping transcripts from the public, she said, did he tell you? What did he tell you? What did the day-to-day manager tell you about what happened to Celeste? This is his answer. 2 days ago on the stand. He did tell me yes. Huh? What does that damn mean? I asked Rob what happened. What did he tell you? He did tell me yes. Then she don't ask for any clarification. Okay, how many times have you spoken to Rob since then? Like, she didn't even get into it. Like, we're here to find out what happened to Celeste. And we have someone saying he was told what happened to Celeste. And Beth Silverman didn't say, so what happened to Celeste? For the judge to have probable cause? She just moves on to the next question. Okay, how many times you talked to him since then? What? Right, just tell us. Just tell us what they did to her and who did it. Bexy Star, exactly. So how can we believe anything he said? Lying on one thing, he could be lying on something else. Thank you, Joy, for the $4.99. Strategic made a good point. Why was there no follow-up with Celeste and the family after the police visited David and she returned home? These are the questions. It's starting to make me wonder who, if anyone else, any other entities, any other whatever, is Beth Silverman covering up for? Thank you, Bexy, for the 6 gems. Thank you, Amber TSW, for the 2 gems and the 10 gems and the 2 gems. Thank you to Marinus for the 5.99 euros. Let's just hope all those involved in her death are brought down, not just David. Period. That would be justice. Thank you, Actually Jensen, for the 300 gems. Thank you to Amber TSW for the 6 gems. Thank you to Bexy Star for the 2 gems and to 1982 MCI for the 200 gems. Thank you to Actually Jensen for the 550 gems and the Stay Hydrated comment. So yeah, I want to know the David crime cabal. I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah, maybe he's trying to make it to where nothing he says can be believable. They should have to do this in a Utah court. Yeah, it would be even less transparent.
This is crazy. He said
Agreed.
Rob Morgenroth, David's day-to-day manager, the same manager that had the Tesla in David's garage, told him yes. Like, what did he tell you? And why didn't the prosecutors continue to ask him, well, what did he tell you? What do you mean he did tell me yes? This is odd.
That's the thing. It's like the case. The whole case. What happened to Celeste and who did it? That's the whole case. And she's like, oh, how many times you talked to Rob since then? It's almost like she's trying to protect her friend Rob or something.
Me that this man lied about this and then came clean in his testimony yesterday, and he doesn't clarify what Robert Morgenroth told him. So did Robert Morgenroth, David's manager, know what happened? They go on to say, okay, how many times would you
Who knew what, who did what, and when?
You say that you have spoken to Rob since he returned from that tour and the rest of the tour was canceled? And he said regularly. How many times approximately? From September to the end of approximately September. Probably a handful of times, approximately 2 or 3 times out of the month. I'd say pretty regularly, at least once a week now. When you testified at the grand jury that you had spoken to
They still talking once a week, him and Morgan Roth.
Rob 50 or 60 times since the tour. That was in February of 2026. Would that be correct? And he said, yes, that's correct. And this is when they go on and start talking about like the bail. And this is why they were moving around money and everything else. And this is the same person. They were all talking in encrypted chat rooms after this. Like what?
As soon as like the heat started to be on David, they all moved to Signal. That's another thing I found to be interesting.
What is happening? I don't trust any of these people that fall under.
It's one thing to be like, I care about privacy and I just like to be on Signal. It's another thing to like, you're under criminal investigation and now you move to Signal. What in the hell?
Mogul Vision at all.
I
Y'all
don't
let me
either.
know what you guys think about all this in the comments.
Shout out to Khadijah Lynn. I will start another little description box link thing. So I'll update the description box at the end with all these links that I'm showing y'all today. Okay, so David's manager is a liar and he admitted to it. Good. Love that. The money manager, the CFO guy, the financial guy. So this is more about the air freshener. Okay, so Trap Moore Ross somehow has been able to get into the courtroom a couple times. So he is updating on it. And I will say, he has been going to all these hearings, even before the preliminary hearing. Like, he's been going to the ones where they're just like not really anything happening and people are just kind of like, okay, we're going to push it off more again. So he's been covering this case in person. I guess he lives around the area in LA or whatever. But he's talking in this short about those 11 air fresheners.
I think I might have just seen one of the dumbest things that David has done in this whole debacle. We just saw testimony from one of the criminalists who was actually there at the yard, who was going through the car when it was found with the remains of Celeste in it. And what we found out was that apparently the car, not just the car, but the front, the body bags, all the way through the car, in the center console, the front cabin, the back cabin, and the back seats, inside the front, inside the bag, it was littered with air fresheners. The guy had put air fresheners everywhere. That's got to be one of the dumbest things I've heard in this whole case. He really thought that just chucking air fresheners at the problem was actually going to fix it.
That is so dumb.
And it wasn't. It was like a whole combination. I think they said that there was around 11 plus air fresheners. We did actually see a picture of them, and it was a combination of about 4 or 5 of those, you know, kind of Christmas tree shaped air fresheners, and then
it was them Christmas tree air fresheners too, girl.
Those ones that you plug into the air vents of your car. This guy really is that dumb that he thought chucking a bunch of air fresheners in the front trunk would solve this problem. It is insane. But I'll keep.
I'm wondering why in all those months he didn't just send this thing off a cliff. I'm glad he didn't.
Posted on any more updates as they come out. Okay.
Okay, so we got some more information yesterday that was groundbreaking. David had a live-in security guard who lived with him.
All right, it's day 2 of David's preliminary hearing.
Let me copy this. Hold on.
And we are already learning about a security guard that had been living with David, and this is the first time we are hearing about this man. His testimony continued from David's financial manager that we heard yesterday, and he was testifying that David had this live-in security guard that lived with him for 6 months.
That's crazy.
Which is pretty crazy because the PI, Steve Fischer, has always referenced somebody else being at this house the night before his house was raided. David's financial...
So I wonder if this security guard, is the one who was perhaps at the house the night before it was raided.
Manager went on to testify he never asked this live-in security guard whatever happened inside this home. Prosecutors started grilling this financial manager, asking if the security guard ever purchased fake IDs for Celeste, if he ever purchased alcohol or drugs, attended parties, or even drove Celeste or David to parties. And this man on the stand said that he never had those conversations, so basically he's not sure. Beth Silverman started to ask this financial manager about the trips that David and Celeste were taking on United Airlines. He went on to testify that he never talked about the London trip that David and Celeste took with Josh Marshall or David's mother. But he did end up admitting that he did discuss David and Celeste's trip to London with David's day-to-day manager, Robert Morgenroth.
He knows something.
Shout out to Rabbit for sending me these transcripts, because in this guy's testimony that he did yesterday, he talks about Robert Morgenroth also.
Okay.
And then they asked this guy, when was the last time that he talked to Robert Morgenroth? And he said it was a week ago. And they said, was it anything related to the case? He said, yes. They said, what was the nature of your conversation with him about this case? And he said that he showed him 2 pieces of mail that his mom had received in relation to, I guess, some wiretapping or information related to his records being subpoenaed. Which is crazy because you remember TMZ reporting that Robert Morgenroth was subpoenaed to the grand jury, and they
Right.
overheard a conversation outside of the grand jury room where he was saying he was being grilled by Beth Silverman. And
Right.
allegedly it had something to do with not calling the police.
And he
then
said it
we hear
wasn't
this
my
financial
business.
manager who I
Remember, Robert Morgenroth was brought before the grand jury, and TMZ had a reporter there, kind of like lurking, out. She wasn't in the room, but she was kind of in the hall or whatever. And Robert Morgenroth comes out of the grand jury room into the hallway, and he's talking to, I guess, his lawyer or whatever, like kind of loud enough for people to hear. And he says, golly, she kept asking me why I didn't call the cops. I just said I didn't feel like it was my responsibility, and I just wanted to get back on the tour. So Robert Morgenroth, again, he is the day-to-day, or was the day-to-day manager for David. There was another manager as well. His name was Josh Marshall, and he was the one whose name was on the lease. But now we're hearing about another type of manager, which is the finance manager. So he's doing the finances, and he would really more often than not be working with David's mom, who kind of was like more the money person in the family. So but even her, like, she wasn't like really that sophisticated with her understanding of it either. But, David kind of has like a momager, Colleen. So this finance manager is getting asked all kinds of questions. He's spilling all kinds of tea. He said, yeah, I knew, that Morgenroth was called before the grand jury or whatever. He's saying, he still talks to Robert Morgenroth, and they were talking recently about how maybe Robert Morgenroth received some kind of, his mom received some kind of mail about a wiretap and a subpoena. And I think only feds can wiretap. So I'm starting to wonder, is this case being looked at by the feds? Are they going to come in and try to, prosecute on this? They can if they want to, if there's federal stuff to prosecute. I mean, this is what's going on with the Luigi Mangione case. He has two cases going on. It's for the same thing. One is in federal court and one is in state court.
I think is sketchy. Talk about how he moved over to encrypted applications to talk to Josh Marshall and Robert Morgenroth after the news came out about Celeste being found in David's trunk. Then went on to talk about the airline tickets purchased.
Calvin, I don't like when people tell me to be careful. It kind of feels like a threat, but hearsay is completely allowed at this stage. I don't know if you missed the part where this is not the trial. So the rules of evidence don't apply at this stage because this is not a trial. This is not to adjudicate whether or not David is guilty. This is to adjudicate whether or not there is enough evidence which could support this charge. So it's just a probable cause hearing, really. Like, police get a whiff of marijuana and there's probable cause. So like probable cause is very low. Hearsay is allowed in these hearings. It would not be allowed. It would not be allowed in a trial, but it's not a trial.
And he said that those airline tickets to London seemed to be purchased from David's personal accounts. And they were pointing out how David has this financial account and he was purchasing things by himself, like home.
So one of David's defenses, this really came up yesterday, is there's no special circumstance of a financial motive because David was just so stupid. He didn't even have access to his money like that. He didn't even know how much money he was making. As far as David was concerned, he wasn't even getting paid. That's seriously what they're going to try and rest their hat on for the special circumstance of the financial circumstance thing, special circumstance. So David's lawyers are kind of like, well, David didn't know how much money he was making. It was his mom. Yeah, okay, fine. Maybe David didn't know the exact amount to the penny, to the dime, to the dollar that he was making. But did David know he was making money? Yes. Did David know that his money train would stop if he was investigated for a crime? Yes. Absolutely, if he was convicted of one, for sure. So they're kind of going over the river and through the woods on this financial stuff. I think it's all just unnecessary for the purposes of moving forward on a probable cause hearing. But I also think both sides, the prosecutor and the defense, are getting a little bit of a, pun intended, trial run on the trial. I think that they're trying to try out what arguments they think are going to work, what arguments they think a judge is going to allow to advance, what types of evidence they might use in trial. So I think that's one of the things they're doing with this preliminary hearing, even though probably Beth Silverman knows that this is not Beth Silverman. Blair Burke probably knows that this is a moot point at this point. She probably knows it's going to be moving forward to trial, but maybe she's just trying out different arguments and stuff to let the prosecutors know, look, this is what you're going to have to deal with at a trial. We're going to be arguing every point.
homes, with prosecutors basically trying to show that David was aware of his finances because it will go to financial gain, which is one of the circumstances under the murder charge. And this testimony also goes along with the next witness we have on the.
Yeah, Calvin, hearsay is what BAM execs are using against Ben. It's the same thing. That has not gone to trial. So when the time for objecting hearsay comes, that's when they'll do it.
Stand, who is from Interscope. With him really testifying how much David has made, he testified in 2022 David made $950,000, and in 2023 it was $3.89 million. And this is really all we have.
So he's making millions of dollars, and he has made millions of dollars, but in 2026 all that stopped. So not only, is there this special circumstance of like, well, David thought if he would get exposed, the money train would stop. Not only is it that, when David did get charged and arrested and all this stuff, the money train did stop. So it would have in the past been a speculation. But today, it's not a speculation. He's being investigated. He has been arrested. He is charged. He is going to probably go to trial. His deals got dropped with Hollister and Crocs. His Fortnite deal got dropped. Collaborators stopped working with him and took videos and songs down that they had done with him. So it not only is like, oh, he could have speculated that maybe the money train would stop if he was investigated for this. It did stop. It actually did stop. So that, I think, actually strengthens Beth Silverman and the prosecution's argument.
Right now, they're basically laying the foundation, like I said, for the financial gain part under the murder charge. But hearing about this security guard, who is a new person that we have never heard before, is very interesting because
that's a big one. So yesterday, two huge, I think three huge things that I found important that happened yesterday on the day two of the hearing is, one, we find out that there's this security guard that's been living with him. Two, we found out that I think, they call anything a security guard. That could have been a handler. That could have been an intelligence agent. I don't know who that was. You know what I mean? Like, anybody could be a security guard. So there's this security guard we found out about that lived with David, who probably knew something. We also found out there was 11 air fresheners in and around that car all over the place. 777 in the chat. We also found out that the financial guy, he lied on the stand to the grand jury. Or he's lying now. In any event, he's done been impeached. So now we don't know if we can trust anything that ever comes out of his mouth. We don't know if he's going to be a credible witness or not. It's going to be up to a jury. The D4VD PR machine does not seem to be making much ground against the court of public opinion. Right. It's the same as they must have hired the same ones as Bricks and Minifigs. Thank you to Stardust for the 550 gems. Stay hydrated. Thanks so much to Miss Marie for the 2 gems, Silver Star. Thanks so much to Bonnie for the 80 gems. Clock it. Okay, so that's Kadisha Lynn. Shout out to her. She does great coverage and she's on top of things. We already did the 11 air fresheners in the trunk. So then this list came out of items that were allegedly ordered and used and purchased to unalive. So this is the timeline of the orders. April 24th, this is the day after prosecutors believe Celeste had passed away. A shovel, which was purchased the day after from Home Depot through Postmates. The detective testified this was one of 3 purchases that investigators identified as significant. May 1st, 2 chainsaws were purchased through Amazon using the account associated with Travion Davis, a red and black 16-inch chainsaw, a pink and black 6-inch handheld chainsaw. You know he did that on purpose because she liked Hello Kitty and pink. The detective testified that both chainsaws were later recovered from David's garage during the September 2025 search. So the ones he ordered here on May 1st, this red one, a red and black and the pink and black, those were still intact. It looked like they were never used. 2 days later, May 3rd, he orders the inflatable pool, and it was delivered to the Doheny address. 1 day later, May 4th, a Makita chainsaw was ordered from Home Depot, identified through Uber and Postmates records. A Libman mop system, a bucket and a spin mop, was also purchased from Lowe's, and this was delivered via Postmates. The next day, May 5th, a cadaver body bag labeled City Morgue was purchased. Thank you, Mandy, for the Sunday. City Morgue, the body bag said. It was purchased through Amazon by Travion Davis and delivered to the Doheny address May 5th. The same day, a heavy-duty laundry bag was also purchased through Amazon by Travion Davis and delivered to the same address. Oh, Trayvon. So some say Travion, see Travion, and other ones say Travyon. Yeah, Travion. And this one says Travion with the Y. I don't know if this person is just Rap Spots TV. Maybe spelling's not their strong suit. Rap Spots. Doheny address. Okay, May 5th, heavy-duty laundry bag from Amazon, Travion Davis. July 7th, so like a month goes by, then he buys the burn cage. So now maybe he's trying to figure out how to get rid of the body. This is to Victoria Mendez, not Travion. And then July 12th, he orders this fireproof mat. It was a burn mat. This was purchased through Amazon. So that mat, that fireproof burn mat is missing. They never found that, but they do know that it was ordered from that same account, the Travion or Trayvon Davis. So now it is 12:53, which means 9:53 over there. So let's see if anything has happened. Any news has come out from court today. I'm like on Google or whatever, but I'm not even seeing anything from today at all. It is early. Let's check out the AP usually has a stream going. They're not even live today. They're not even out there today. They were yesterday. I guess it is still early over there. Court would have only started, I think, about 50 minutes ago, if it's even started on time. Oh, they're not having court today. They're going to restart on Friday? What makes you say that? Thought it was today. Do we not have a hearing? Now I'm wondering. Okay, I'm going to pull up the transcript. Shout out to Down the Rabbit Hole News for sending me this transcript. I did send her a little bit of cash, but if y'all want to help out with covering the transcript costs, I would say go over there to Rabbit and pitch in over there, because even though they're not letting us have the transcripts in real time, like each day, eventually they will be available, and I'm certainly planning on reading them. I mean, was I going to do that before? Probably not. That's a lot of work. But now that I know that the prosecutor is trying to hide it from us and wants to punish people for having the audacity to want to know what's going on in our courts, then now I'm going to definitely be reading them. So shout out to Rabbit for sending me this. Hold on. Having a little hard drive glitch moment. What is it that Beth Silverman is so afraid of coming to light? Who knows? Hold on. Rabbit said it's about $135 a day versus Diddy, which was like $400. I think some of those got up to like $1,000 a day. I think like 800 something. Rabbit said they could be up to 300 to 400 pages. I think they go by pages, like how long it is and stuff. All right. So people are saying they don't think the hearing for today even started yet. This is day 1. Okay. Preliminary hearing transcript. And it's 173 pages long. I don't know how much we're going to get through it, but we'll start it. We'll start it because this is the closest that we're going to get. This is the closest we're going to get to transparency and to knowing what happened in the courtroom. There's no cameras, there's no video, there's no live tweeting. So we're just going to have to read what happened and all that. So we have a little exhibit list here. This is interesting. Description, photographs, poster, DVD, transcript. I think this right here was the body camera of the February 2024 welfare check, where the cops went to David's house and like were looking for missing person, missing child, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. I think that's that first DVD. Then there was a transcript, photographs, Google Maps. This is, I believe, navigation data. Navigation data from April trip to Santa Barbara County. Another DVD. I don't know what that was. Oh, actually I do. That was I think David in neighborhood moving the Tesla, and that was on the 29th of last year, right before he went on tour. Photographs, description, photograph, 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 photograph. Okay. Appearances, David, his lawyers, the court. Okay, so this is the judge. We're on record in the People versus David. Can the lawyers make their appearances? And they do. So People for David, they spell their name. Okay. She said just a few housekeeping things before we get to all of that. Oh, wait, hold on. Let's go up a little bit. All right. She says, thank you. I will designate him investigating. Sorry, I scrolled too far. Good morning, Mr. Burke. Good morning, Your Honor. Blair Burke. Good morning. Okay. All right. For the People. Deputy District. Okay. Also, counsel at the table, do we have? This is the detective. Detective Josh Byers. This was the first witness, I believe, or second. He's one of the investigating officers in this case. We also have Detective Farrell. Had a meeting this morning. He'll be here this afternoon. Okay. How do you spell that? She spells it Byers. Okay, thank you. I will designate him investigating officer for purposes of our preliminary hearing, along with your other investigators. Or your other investigating officer when he gets here. Okay, thank you so much, said the prosecutor. David's lawyer. Your Honor, can we confirm there's no other witnesses in the courtroom? The judge said, yeah, we'll get to that in a second. I want to get to some housekeeping things first. I think I already took a waiver for continuous preliminary hearing. Okay, all right, then Mr. Burke. So she looks to David. The judge looks to David and says, David, I want you to understand something. She said, and I advise everyone who comes in front of me of this, whether we're starting a preliminary hearing or a trial, but pursuant to the criminal code, once we start your preliminary hearing, your absence after the hearing has commenced and your physical presence shall not prevent the hearing from going forward. Okay, so if you don't show up to court, we still going. So you got to be here or not, but we're going to be keeping going. We're not going to be pausing because you don't show up. In any case, after you are being warned, you will be removed if you continue any disruptive behavior. And she said, not that I expect that you're going to be disruptive, but I just give this warning to everybody. So the judge is basically like, be on your best behavior. Because if you're not, I can kick you out of here and we could still have the hearing and you don't even get a right to be in here anymore. So just be on your best behavior. And she said, I tell everybody this. This is not special treatment. I'm not like specially singling you out. But don't be acting crazy because I'll kick you out. Okay. Back to what I was doing before I was interrupted. Okay. Just acting okay. So so the judge is basically saying, like, don't act crazy to David. Okay. She says also, at this particular stage, because the prosecutors have not made a decision on the death penalty, right now, the case moves forward still as a death penalty case until the time when the DA takes that off the table. So this might not apply later on. I don't know what the DA's decision is going to be, but I want to give you the admonishment nonetheless that if for some reason you choose to voluntarily absent yourself, and I think I indicated that if you decide you want to take a later bus, you decide you want to stay back for a shower, those are all considered voluntary. So, right. So if you're late because you get on a late bus instead of the first bus out of the jail, if you're late because you wanted to take a shower, you might not be here. And this is a death penalty case. So just be very careful that you are here. Obviously, your lawyers are here. They will continue to represent your constitutional rights. But you have to understand, if you choose to voluntarily not be here, I'm sure they would not advise you to do that. You may be giving up some of your constitutional rights. The right to remain silent, the right to testify on your own behalf, and all of that. So I just give that same admonishment to everyone once we start our preliminary hearing, and that's pursuant to the law. Do you understand that? David says, yes, Your Honor. Okay, with that said, we have to deal with the shackling motion. Okay, so this is where David had asked to not have the handcuffs and not have the shackles. Also, exclusion of witnesses. So certain witnesses, David's lawyers don't want to come take the stand, and I wonder which ones. I wonder who that is. Other than the two investigating officers that Ms. Silverman has put on the record, that's Beth Silverman, are there any other prospective witnesses in the courtroom? I don't believe so. Okay, are there any witnesses here on the case? Anybody that's testified at the grand jury? Court said no. Okay, so this, I wonder if this is going to implicate in some way Steve Fischer and his rights. Because he wasn't there in the courtroom on the day one, but somebody told me he's in there today. So he is a witness, or was a witness, who testified at the grand jury. So I wonder if that's going to cause any issues. So the exclusion of witnesses just means that witnesses can't be in the courtroom. Because why? Because the same reason we talked about yesterday with the bricks and the minifigs. If the guy is standing there listening to the whole story first from Ammon, and then now he's going to come over here and be like, oh yeah, that's what I saw too. No, you just got fed the story. So if you're a witness to something, then you need to come in and talk as the witness and testify as a witness. You don't need to hear everything going on first. You need to say just what you said. Okay. So the prosecutor has made an inquiry. Nobody has responded. I'm assuming you're also making the same request and asking to exclude any potential witnesses that may be witnesses at trial. The prosecutor said yes, they need to not be in here. The judge said, okay, do we have any potential defense witnesses present? Because, you know, David gets to call his own people up too. It's not just the prosecutor who gets to call up a witness. So what's good for the goose, good for the gander. The judge is saying any witnesses at all whatsoever, potential witnesses in this case. Now, I do think it's possible that the parents might have been called as witnesses. David's lawyer said, Your Honor, only with respect to the people's request to have two investigating officers present, we would ask that it be one. We understand both are on the witness list, and obviously, you know, the reason for the witness exclusion is to not influence testimony, right? Like, this is the whole point. The witnesses ain't supposed to be in here because they're not supposed to hear somebody else's version of the story. The court will allow the people to designate 2 investigating officers for this case, and the Penal Code section, as it relates to preliminary hearings, allows the court discretion to do that. So the court is going to side with Beth Silverman and let there be 2 investigating officers. Beth said, I would note for the record, this is the prosecutor, the court has allowed counsel to have 3 attorneys on this case, and there's just me over here, Your Honor. So she only has herself. She don't have any assistant. She's doing it all by herself, but David has 3 lawyers, and they're good. The judge said, okay, we're noting it. And this is to kind of preserve the record and put it on the record. It's not like David is being railroaded with a whole team, a whole panel of lawyers. Beth said, it's just me. It's only me. And he got 3 lawyers. So they're over here, you know, mad about my 2 little investigator officers or whatever, but like he got 3 lawyers over there. One more thing, the prosecutor said. I wanted to point out, Your Honor, and maybe this makes a difference to the court, but the family is here. The parents are here specifically. And I would ask that they be allowed to remain under Marcy's law since they are not testifying at this hearing. Obviously, they have no knowledge relevant to the actual charges other than that their daughter went missing on a particular date. The judge said, okay, so generally how I handle this at the preliminary hearing stage, I'm not sure the defense has made a request to do that, but generally speaking, especially in cases of this seriousness and nature, the court generally does allow family members of either a victim, in this case, pursuant to Marcy's law, as well as defense family members to remain in the courtroom. So if David's mom, his parents wanted to be there, that would be allowed as well. To the extent they may provide trial testimony, if they are not, and I should say if they are not percipient or material witnesses, if they're just peripheral witnesses to peripheral facts, like when did she go missing, either side, if they do testify at trial, can bring out that they were present at the preliminary hearing and they heard witness testimony. I'm not going to limit that questioning, but obviously both families have a vested interest with regard to being present for this proceeding. So the judge says, defense, David's lawyers, do you wish to be heard with regard to that? Blair Burke said, no, Your Honor, the parents can stay in here. I don't care. Okay, cool. Judge says, all right. So for the people, as I said, if there's any member from the defense family, that's David's family, present, who's not like a material main witness, maybe just like a little, you know, yeah, I was there this day. I saw him there this day. Just like kind of peripheral facts. The court is going to extend them the same consideration. The judge then looks over to the prosecutor, says, Ms. Silverman, did you wish to be heard on that? No, thank you. Okay. Otherwise, both sides ready for the preliminary hearing? Ooh, yes, Your Honor. And prosecutor, Ms. Silverman, are you ready? She said, I am. Ooh, she had a red power suit on that day. That was before she was limiting our access to the transcripts. The judge said, okay, we have a shackling motion I need to discuss. Let me pull that up. That was filed July 10th. The court is prepared to hear that before we actually start the preliminary hearing. David's lawyer, the judge looks over, Miss Blair Burke, would you be handling that matter or would it be Miss Bednarski? Blair Burke said, it's me. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Since the date of David's arrest on April 16th, he has on multiple occasions appeared before Your Honor. This young man, I think Your Honor has an opportunity to observe, has conducted himself at all times in a respectful, quiet, appropriate manner before this court. There's no indication or record of any disciplinary or disruptive or unruly behavior by David in court or out of court, which would support any manifest need for shackles. Shackles are, by definition, undignified and unnecessary under Penal Code Section 688, where David is presumed to be innocent, as he sits before Your Honor. And 688 makes clear that he should not be subject to any more restraint than necessary. I think the California Supreme Court, as to shackling at trial, and specifically as to the preliminary hearing, made it clear that shackling is impermissible unless there is some specific showing of necessity. And to our knowledge, Your Honor, there's a complete absence of any record or showing as to any need, even on a lowered standard for a preliminary hearing, that at trial of any manifest need to have David shackled. And we would submit that. Okay. The judge said, okay, thank you, Blair Burke. All right. With regard to the case law that the court found in the People v. Fierro 1991 case, I'm sorry, what is that noise? The bailiff said, a hearing device. So somebody's freaking hearing aid was beeping. Okay, held that the defendants cannot be the judge says, okay, anyway, back to what I was saying. Defendants cannot be shackled at a preliminary hearing unless there is a showing of some need, but a lesser showing than that is required at a trial. So Fierro superseded the Court of Appeal opinion in the People v. Solomon, which held that the defendant had the same right to an individualized showing. The latest case. So the judge is going through the precedent, bunch of precedential cases. Deshawn hearing and the People v. Miller. She's going through a bunch of them. With that said, the request to unshackle David completely and entirely, that's denied. Okay, so he's going to have some shackles. All right, the request is denied as to have no shackles at all. She said what the court will do, he's currently in handcuffs. I will have the handcuffs removed. His hands will be free. He has a waist chain. He was brought in on the waist chain. The sheriffs are directed to attach the waist chain to the chair. But otherwise, his hands are free, so he can assist in his defense. Have his free use of his hands to take notes, pass notes to counsel, take a sip of water if he needs to or wants to. So his hands will be free. And Blair Burke said, Your Honor, if I may, just for the record, the court says, as I always say, I am not a party to the proceedings, so arguing with me is not a remedy that the court affords the parties. You can't argue with me. The judge. She said, David's lawyer said, Your Honor, can I briefly, for the record, just put some argument on the record? The judge basically said, no. You can't argue with me. But if you're going to say something different than what you already said, sure, go ahead. Usually, when I ask if counsel submits, then you submit and you can seek whatever other review you wish. But I'm not going to argue with counsel. Ooh, she ain't playing. She ain't playing. So she said, I'm not going to be arguing with you. David's lawyer said, no, Your Honor, I'm not going to seek to argue with you. Okay, the court said, all right, well, if you want to put something else on the record that you didn't raise, you may do so. Blair said, just because the court raised Tiffany versus Superior Court, I think the California cases have made it clear that while a lower showing is acceptable and sufficient, it doesn't mean there's no showing. And we just wanted to reinforce with the court that there has been absolutely no showing that there is any need or good cause to have David shackled. The judge said, okay, thank you. Anyway, so it's clear with regard to the procedures in this court, the thing that the waist chain and the chair will do is just ensure that David stays in his seat. That would be required from an appropriate courtroom protocol. He's in custody. He would not be able to get up from his chair or have any free access to roam around the courtroom if in any way whatsoever. And otherwise, other than that, his hands are free and he can have full use of his hands. Okay, and this is crazy because, like, in Diddy's case, he didn't have shackles on in court. Like, even Diddy was allowed to, like, stand up and kind of, like, move around in that front area. Otherwise, other than that, his hands are free and he can have full use of his hands. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. We appreciate your ruling. The court said, okay, with that said, moving on to the preliminary hearing. Counsel, does your client, David, waive the reading of the complaint? Further statement of constitutional rights? Yes. So the criminal defendants have the right to have their complaint read out in open court to them, but they can waive it. It's like 9 pages long, too. It would have taken a while. Okay, the court said, I've already granted the motions to exclude the witnesses for both sides, absent the 2 designated investigating officers and the family members for both sides. If it becomes an issue and you want the court to put on the record which family members are present for future trial use, just let me know and you can write out a list and we will make sure it gets on the record if you want that preserved somehow. People, call your first witness. Dum dum. Beth Silverman. Yes, wait, hold on. Before we do that, Your Honor, I also had a conversation with your clerk this morning. The clerk. Had a conversation with the clerk this morning. I believe I've indicated before, I always pre-mark everything because I like everything to be entirely organized. So all of our exhibits are pre-marked. Although I understand your clerk does not like them to be pre-marked, so I will just call them out in random numbers without pre-marking them, but they are going to be numbered according to what we've done. And there is already a preliminary hearing exhibit list for the clerk. And on top of that, there's 2 CDs. One has business records that will be referring to that the defense has, and one on a separate CD, as your clerk prefers, is a body-worn video that we're going to be playing this morning. It's approximately 10.5 minutes. Judge said, okay. Then David's lawyer, Your Honor, is it possible for us to get a copy of the exhibit list, which we do not have? Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I'll make sure you get that. Then she asks Miss Lewis, whoever that is, the judicial assistant, do you have a copy of the exhibit list? She said, no, I don't. Beth Silverman said, yes, you do, because I handed it to you. Judicial assistant, you handed me the witness list? I did not hand you the... Okay, it's okay. When we take a short recess, we will get a copy of the exhibit list. And if you also need the witness list, we'll get it and make sure all of us have it. Okay? All right, you can go ahead. All right, so then finally, 19 pages in, they finally getting started. Oh, no, they're not. No, they're not. Beth Silverman wants to make another one. I can make another one if you want a third copy for the court. The judge said, yeah, that'd be nice. Great. I mean, I'm happy to do that as well, the judge said. We can do that here if you're here in the courtroom. You don't want to run to your office. Okay, so we'll just put them in individually instead of a whole stack, but we will have the exhibit list up front. And we'll wait as the CDs are marked so that those go in order. So your clerk prefers. Okay, thank you. Sure, great. Thank you. Okay. Call your first witness, finally. Nope, still not finally. Your Honor, David's lawyer. Can the clerk provide us a copy of the witness list too? Because we don't have that either. This is kind of bullshit. Like, if you're going to be tried for like a death penalty situation, can you get the person who might be killed in prison a copy of the witnesses and the exhibits on the first day of the preliminary hearing? I mean, like, it's really... Everybody has a right to a fair trial. And when David goes behind them doors and they close and they clank, clank, he needs to stay there. He needs to stay there. And so we don't need to be letting him have all this. Well, they didn't even give us an exhibit list. They didn't even give us that witness list. We don't need to be letting them have all of that. Give them the freaking list. And she said, what she said she did. I sent a copy of that to them already. David's lawyer said, no, she didn't. We got some names, but we do not have a formal list. Beth said, yes, you do. I sent it to you. The judge, okay, that's fine. That's a technicality. We don't need to have debated on the record. We'll just make sure all sides have it, okay? So back to the first witness that I've now told you to call 3 freaking times. Oh, yeah. The people's first witness, Your Honor, is going to be Senior Deputy Juan Gonzalez. Finally, 20 pages in. All right. Prosecutor says, counsel, all you need to do is ask if you needed another copy. You don't need to put it on the record. Okay, so Beth Silverman is a bitch. We know this. And she is a bitch. She puts her hands on people in court. She's a control freak. I mean, shout out to her for trying to maybe prosecute David, even though she waited way too long to do it and didn't make any arrests and all of that. But it seems like she's very bitchy to David's lawyers too, and they're catty with each other back and forth. David's lawyers. Because look at this. Counsel, she says, Beth Silverman, all you need to do is ask if you needed another copy. And see how she said another copy? Because she's like, I already sent it to you, but I can send you another copy, and all you have to do is ask. The assistant to the judge. Okay, fine. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state the testimony you're going to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? I do. Okay. Go ahead and have a seat. Thank you. If you need to pull the mic up closer, you can. Okay, cool. Okay. The assistant to the judge said, let me have you state your first and spell your first and last name, Deputy Juan Gonzalez. Thank you. You may begin. They're having technical difficulties. Okay. All right. Sir. Prosecutor starts the questioning. Direct examination. Sir, can you tell us how it is that you're employed? He said, yep, I am a deputy sheriff with the LA County Sheriff's Department. I'm currently assigned to the West Hollywood station, where I've been for the past 8 years. How many years have you been employed as a deputy sheriff? 14. Okay, let's direct your attention back to a couple years ago, to February 17th, 2024. All right, so we're back in time. We're in the time machine. We've traveled to 2024. Did you respond that evening to a request from a Riverside Sheriff's Department officer or whatever to conduct a welfare check at the home of an individual by the name of David Burke? Yes, ma'am, I did. And was that the location of 804 North Doheny Drive in West Hollywood? Yes. And approximately what time did you go out to that location? I don't remember, but I remember from my memory it was nighttime. Approximately 7 p.m. or does that refresh your recollection, or do you need to look at your reports? He said that refreshes my recollection. Okay. And did you go out alone, or were you with a partner? He said, I was not by myself. Deputy Thomas went with me. She was not assigned to my car. She had her own unit. I think she maybe was my assist that day. Okay. So you went there together? Yes, ma'am. You met there at the house? Yes, ma'am. And what was your purpose that night along with Deputy Thomas? What were you doing at that house? He said to simply check the house, the residence, to see if a minor female was there by the name of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. I was supposed to speak with a gentleman that was residing at the residence. Okay. Next question, where did you get the information about this particular minor's name and age? He said, I think from when I initially called the handling detective, Detective Rivas. So the detective in Riverside had the same last name as Celeste Rivas. Okay. So the detective in Riverside, he was a sheriff's detective or Riverside County Sheriff? Yes, Riverside County Sheriff. Okay, great. And were you also informed that the individual at this home, were you informed that he already knew you would be coming by to do a check? Yes. So David already knew that the police were coming to check his house. Okay. Now, David's lawyers objected to that, but the judge let it ride. She said it's foundational. So the detective, Juan Gonzalez, he says, yes, ma'am, I believe that Detective Rivas from Riverside asked me over the phone that the gentleman who was residing at the residence knew I was coming. Oh, advised. Yes, ma'am, I believe Detective in Riverside told me that David already knew I was coming. Did he give you a name for that individual that you were supposed to be this gentleman's name? Yes, I believe it was David Burke. Your Honor, said the prosecutor, I'm going to ask to mark, again, as I indicated, they're going to be out of order. People's Exhibit number 2. This is titled Studio House, 804 North Doheny Drive in West Hollywood. I think there's 2 houses, so one is called Studio House. And this particular exhibit has 2 photographs of the exterior of the home. Okay, 2 photographs are in this exhibit, People's Exhibit 2. Okay, they put it in, marked for identification purposes. Okay, so next question. I'm showing you Exhibit 2, and you understand these were taken during the daylight hours, but do you recognize this particular location? The detective said, yes, ma'am. It looks like the residence that I went to that evening. Okay. And on the evening of February 17th, 2024, right? Yes, ma'am. And Your Honor, I have another exhibit. This would be People's 3. Please, again, same title, 2 photographs. These are aerial photographs of the house. Showing you Exhibit 3. Is this the location of the residence as we see here in West Hollywood? And on the photograph on the right, it's outlined in red. Yes, ma'am. He said, the detective said, I remember when I first entered the location. It was through that driveway. Okay. And when you got to the front door of the residence, did somebody answer the door? Yes, ma'am. And who was that? David Burke. And do you see David Burke in this courtroom here today? Yes, ma'am. Can you identify him? By either describing where he is seated or what he is wearing or point to him in some manner? It's the young man with the LA County orange jumpsuit. Thank you. And was there anybody else that came to the door with him at the time? No, he came to the door by himself. Okay, and did you find any other individuals inside the home? No, ma'am. Did you go into the home? Yes, ma'am. Did you have a conversation with him about this minor that you were looking for? This missing person by the name of Celeste Rivas Hernandez? Did you have a conversation with David about this missing child? Yes, ma'am. And what was the defendant's response? He said, I think initially we asked him, is Celeste there? He said, no. We proceeded to ask him when was the last time he spoke to her. I believe he said February 13th, which is the day before Valentine's Day, by the way. He said, then I asked, when was the last time you actually saw her with your eyes? And he told me he thought it was November 12th. So he talked to her a few days ago, but last time he actually physically saw her, he claimed to the cops, was November 12th, the year before, 2023. And did he also provide you some information regarding this missing person? The deputy said, I think I asked him, how did you meet her? And he said he met her through Facebook or Instagram or like some online chatting group, Discord. So he didn't remember, but it was somewhere online. Okay, did he tell you when that was? Yeah, I think he said 2020 or 2021. Okay, and did he act like he was very familiar with this individual? That they had some sort of a close relationship or the opposite? So this was objected to. The judge said, all right, you can describe what his demeanor was or what he said. Okay, so the cop said, well, basically, he said he just met her through the chat online. He met her one time in person. And from my conversation with him briefly, I took it as if he really didn't know her. Okay, so David kind of put this detective under the impression he didn't really know Celeste. Did he provide a phone number? Yes, ma'am. And do you recall the phone number? No, not from memory. Okay. Did he also show you some photographs in his phone? Yes, ma'am. What were the photographs in the phone depicting? He said, I think the first one was like a young lady in like a school picture. The judge said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Miss Silverman. I just want to make sure I have the dates correct. Now, remember, the judge is going to be interrupting in this preliminary hearing in ways that we're not used to and expected to see in a trial. Because usually in a trial, the judge is there to kind of keep the order and to keep the procedure going. But the jury is the one that needs to know the facts. But in this case, in this preliminary hearing stage, the judge is the jury because all she needs to decide is yes or no, is there probable cause to move forward on this? The judge said, you're talking about Mr. Burke last speaking to Celeste February 13th, 2024, but he last saw Celeste in 2023. Is that correct? Because I'm showing the offense date in the complaint is April 23rd of 2025. So I just want to make sure I'm correct in this time frame. The prosecutor said, yeah, I believe the deputy testified, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that he only met her once, that David only met her once, and it was in November 2023. Judge said, okay. But then he last spoke with her, according to the defendant, David, in February 2024. Okay. He met her through Discord or online somehow in 2020 or 2021. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And the photograph that he showed you, you said it was a school photograph. Would that be like a yearbook photograph? And the judge said, the deputy said, yes, I believe so. Okay. Well, did it appear to be a photograph that had other children around? With names? He said yes. And did he also show you another photograph of Celeste? He said, I think toward the end of my conversation with David, he showed me another photograph of like an Instagram post of her missing persons flyer. Oh my God. Okay, so finally we do get the final update here. David is the one who showed the detective the missing person flyer. Now, what do we know about that missing person flyer is it said she was 13 years old on it. I don't know if it was like a police bolo or if it was just like an Instagram post of a missing child. Beth said, okay, got it. The judge said, you just say a missing child flyer? The judge is shook. She said, you just said he showed you a missing child flyer? Yes, ma'am. I think right here is about the point the judge found the probable cause. I'm just gonna go out on a limb. Prosecutor said, okay, Your Honor, hold on. I got another exhibit. Exhibit 4. It's called Screenshot of Defendant Showing Victim's Yearbook Photo to LASD. February 17, 2024. And there's 2 photographs. Okay. Next question. I'm showing you Exhibit 4, Detective. Is this the way the defendant looked when you went into his house that evening? Yes, ma'am. And looking at that photograph on the right, does this appear to be a close-up of the yearbook or the school photo that David showed you of Celeste? And he indicated he had met her once. Yes, ma'am. Your Honor, I have another exhibit, Exhibit 5, and it's titled 55, and it's titled Missing Persons Poster Shown by Defendant, by David to the police. What an idiot. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm showing this Exhibit 55 to the detective, and does this appear to be the photograph or the missing persons poster that you described that David showed you in his house on his phone that he had already on his phone? Yes, ma'am. Did you tell David while you were at his home that the missing person was in fact 13 years old? The detective said, yes, I did. Okay. And at some point, did you and your partner that evening, Deputy Thomas, search for signs of this missing girl? Yes, ma'am. We searched. And was that with David's consent? Did he consent to you searching for her? Yes. Did you find anything that would perhaps be specific to a young girl? He said, I tried to do a thorough search for her. I tried to look for anything that pertained to a female, such as makeup. I looked for hygiene products. I didn't see anything. Only thing I remember seeing was some Hello Kitty stuff. And that kind of stuck out to me. But I remember when speaking with him, he said this is like an artist's home. This is not like his home. So that a lot of people are in and out of there. But the missing person flyer from February that year did say that the last thing she was wearing was Hello Kitty stuff. Let me see if I can find that. Look. So this is not the first one. I think there was an earlier one than this. But there was one that came out. Last seen Lake Elsinore, age 13, hair brown. Last seen wearing gray pants, black sweater, hat, and Hello Kitty sandals. So it was known at some point in 2024, early 2024, that she did wear Hello Kitty stuff. I got this transcript from Down the Rabbit Hole News. You didn't see any makeup. You didn't see any hygiene products. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah. No, ma'am. And you didn't find Celeste at this location? No, ma'am. Did you speak with any of the sheriffs from Riverside County Sheriff Department while you were at the studio house? Yes, ma'am. While I was still in the residence, I called Detective Rivas from Riverside and I told him of the information that I had and that we had searched the place. We didn't find her. Okay. And did the defendant, David, tell you who he was? What? Sorry, what? Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Did David tell you who he was or what he did for a living? Oh, Mr. David Burke? I know at some point he stated he was an artist. Okay, did he tell you what kind of artist? Like an indie pop type artist, a singer? Did you recognize him? No, ma'am. I'd never seen him nor heard of any of his music before. Had you ever heard his name? No. Did you or your partner that night, Deputy Thomas, although you came separately, did you each have body cams on? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And did you take any photographs while you were at David's temporary residence? Yes, ma'am. I took pictures. I took a photograph of his ID, photographs he showed me of Celeste. Your Honor, the prosecutor says to the judge, I have a DVD that contains body cam from this deputy. It is cut down at the beginning and at the end on areas outside the residence. It depicts the events that took place on February 17, 2024. I have it marked as Exhibit 5A. It'll be so marked for identification, and I'm going to place LASD-BWV for body-worn video on the actual DVD and indicate that it actually has been redacted. It's approximately like 10 and a half minutes, so I also have a transcript. May that be marked, please, as People's 5B. It's 9 pages in length, and I sent a copy to counsel. If I could provide the court a copy of the transcript and your clerk the DVD. Thank you. Thank you. And Your Honor, there would be stipulation on behalf of the people that if the court wants to entertain that, your reporter does not have to transcribe the video. Okay, so they play the audio and video in court, but they don't transcribe it. And this is the body camera interaction of David with these cops that night in 2024 when they were looking for a missing person, Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who was 13 at the time. Okay, so they finished watching the video. Does the video appear to be accurate in terms of the observations you made, the conversations you had that evening, February 2024? The deputy said, the deputy said, yes, ma'am. Okay, did the transcript also appear to be accurate? Yes, ma'am. Nothing further, Your Honor. Now it's time for cross-examination. Okay, so now David's lawyer, Miss Peter, stands up. Her last name is Peter. Deputy, having watched that body cam, was there at one point where you actually told David that Celeste was 13 years old? He's like, when did you say that? Because you just told us earlier, you explicitly told David that Celeste was 13 years old. Come to find out, you did not. You did not. We didn't hear that in the video. So can you point to where you said that? He said, I believe we spoke about that. Hold on. I believe we spoke about that, he said. He stated that Celeste had told him that she was actually 18. But then I guess somebody had told him, whoever that was, yeah, I'd love to know who that somebody was, that she was actually 13. And at some point I asked him, does she look 13? And he said no. Okay, but when you went to the house that night, did you know one way or another whether Celeste was underage? He said, I believe I did after speaking to the detective first, ma'am, yes. Okay, David's lawyer says, okay, but when you were there with David at his house, I think your words to him were, I guess she's 13. Is that right? Well, if that's what I said on the video, I guess. But you described David as overall being cooperative with the reason why you were at his house, right? Yeah, oh yeah, he was very cooperative for sure. Okay. Was there actually one point where David was trying to volunteer information to you and you actually stopped him from talking? Yes, ma'am. You told him, oh, we're not investigating anything, right? Isn't that what you told to my client, David? He said, well, as far as myself and the LA County Sheriff's Department, we weren't investigating him. He said, we didn't have the case against him. I didn't know. As far as I knew, I was just delegated a task, which was look for missing girl. I don't know what kind of case the detective from Riverside County was working on. So I was just delegated a task to go look for her. That was my task, and that's what I was doing. Okay. But when you spoke with David, he gave you Celeste's full name. He provided that, right? Yes, ma'am. And he also provided you with her last phone number, digit by digit. Yes, ma'am. And he also indicated to you that he had previously spoken with a Riverside officer, right? Yes, ma'am. And he volunteered that he wanted to recap to you everything he had previously told the Riverside officer. He said, from that statement where he was beginning to talk, it sounded like he was trying to tell me what he already told the Riverside detective. But again, I did not know what kind of case Riverside was dealing with or what they were investigating. So that's why I said, look, I'm only here to look for this missing girl, and that's it. I don't want your details. Okay, David's lawyer said. But one of those statements was Mr. Burke. One of the things he said was, on his own, quote, she told me she was 18, right? Isn't that something he told you? She told me she was 18? Yeah. Okay, and when you asked David for photographs of Celeste, he actually showed you multiple photographs, like we saw in the body cam video, right? Yes, ma'am. And at one point, you actually asked him, does she look 13? Detective said, or the deputy said, yeah, I asked him that. Okay. Is the reason you asked David if she looked 13 because when you were looking at the photo, the image depicted somebody who did not appear to be 13? The cop said, I wouldn't be able to tell you why I asked him, but I know at the moment something that I asked. I don't know why I asked. So she's like, why did you ask? Does she look 13? Why'd you ask that question? And the deputy's basically like, I don't know. That was 2 years ago. I don't know why I asked that. I wouldn't be able to tell you. Okay, nothing further. So now Beth gets the opportunity to come and do the redirect. Now, basically, the thing, Sandra Bullock owns that house? No, she doesn't. Not, oh, maybe this one. Definitely not the one where, what's his name was parked, because the person who owns that house hired Steve Fischer. But okay, so basically we're starting to get a little outline very early on of what David's defense is going to be. Number one, he did not know how old she was. He's going to say he thought she was 18. So the whole thing about underage, Celeste was just this lying thought. That's what's going to be his defense. And she just lied about her age and had fake IDs and tricked him. And he's this innocent Pentecostal boy. Okay, that's going to be one. Another one is going to be other people didn't even know she was 13. Even the cop didn't think she looked 13. That's going to be one of his defenses. All right, so now we have the prosecutor coming back up. She gets to do a redirect. The word cooperative means the person is forthcoming, doesn't it? Yes, ma'am. And therefore, if somebody's being forthcoming, that means they're telling the truth, right? Objection. The judge allows it, though. What I will not allow from either side is one witness cannot give an opinion as to the veracity of another witness. So, I will allow Ms. Silverman to explore what cooperative means to this witness, but giving an opinion as to whether or not David was truthful, the court is not going to allow that, Ms. Silverman. Beth said, okay, Beth, no problem. Detective, deputy, do you use the term cooperative in the assumption that someone is telling the truth? He said, well, I'm a police officer, so my job is to make my own opinion based on facts. I believe he was telling me the truth. So the cop said, look, he might have been telling the truth, he might not have. But when I was there in his house, I did believe he was telling me the truth. That is what my opinion is. I thought he was telling me the truth, yes. Based on his demeanor. Okay, so based on his demeanor, that's why you said you thought he was telling the truth. Yes. Beth, the prosecutor, says, and that's why he seemed very casual, talking with food in his mouth, talking about a beer in the fridge, having a party, stuff like that. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so you assumed he was being truthful with you. Therefore, you said, yes, I believe he was being cooperative, right? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Prosecutor says, now, did David tell you that he had been having a sexual relationship with this underage girl for several months? That's a leading question. If I was David's lawyer, I probably would object. And they did. The judge said, well, it's clearly relevant, but at this point, it assumes facts, not in evidence. So she's saying, look, maybe at trial I would allow this question, but I guess for now we can let it go. The judge said, well, you can ask him if he believed he was cooperative. The tape speaks for itself as to what was said and what wasn't said. Okay. So the prosecutor says, did David ever mention to you that he had been having an sexual relationship with her? She asked the same question again. And again, David's lawyer objects. The evidence speaks for itself. The video says everything that was said and wasn't said, and we really don't need to get into what else was said because you can watch the video. Obviously, David did not say he was having an sexual relationship with her in that video. The court said, okay, actually, I agree with David's side. Let's move on to the next question. Prosecutor said, did David ever tell you that he assisted Celeste in her plan to run away? Okay, this is something I haven't heard anybody talking about, and this is why I'm glad we have these transcripts. I heard about this part, this whole the prosecutor was trying to ask, did David tell you he was having an S relationship with this girl? Did he tell you he was having involved in an sexual relationship? I heard that, and I heard that the judge eventually shut down the line of questioning. I did not hear this part. Did David ever tell you he assisted Celeste in her plan to run away? Did he ever tell you he picked her up from her home in Lake Elsinore? Objection. To come to his home, the judge said again, Beth, you can't ask this stuff. This is assuming a lot of things not in evidence. Another way of saying leading question. Did he tell you? It's did he tell you that he was colluding and conspiring with her to commit crimes? Like you have to make a lot of assumptions in that question, that someone colluded, that there were crimes being considered, all this stuff. So the judge is like, at this point for the preliminary hearing, we don't have those facts and evidence, so I'm not going to let you ask that question either. Okay, fine, nothing further. Judge said, all right, anything further from the other side? No. Okay, you could step down. The people call your next witness. Okay, so now we're on to witness number 2. Detective Josh Byers. Now, this is the guy that discovered the trash bag. Not discovered. He came to the scene. They'd had the search warrant. He, saw the trash bag and the cadaver bag and all that. So he swears in. Thank you. Okay, direct examination begins, and this is with the prosecutor, Beth Silverman. Detective, can you tell us what your occupation and assignment is? He says, I'm a police detective for the LAPD. I'm assigned to the robbery homicide division. And I do think this is the guy that was making a bunch of these statements that came out previously, like before any charges were brought and stuff. How many years have you been assigned to the robbery homicide division? He said, 12 years. And I've been a police officer for 26 years. He's in the homicide special section. And in that department, They are responsible for investigating the murder of police officers, crimes against police officers, any multiple over 3 homicides in one incident, and anything that would be considered a high-profile homicide, or really any case that's designated as such by our chief. Okay, so this would be like complex homicides and high-profile homicides? Yes, ma'am. And do you work with a partner? I do. Who is your partner? Corey Farrell. Farell. And for how many years have you and Detective Farrell been working together? On and off, I think like maybe 8 years, maybe longer, 8 to 10, I would say. All right. And I want to direct your attention to September 8th of 2025, last year, where you called out to a police tow yard. Again, y'all, this is very important. I've talked about this before. This is not just any old tow yard. It's a police tow. The police have this tow yard, the Hollywood tow yard. What was the reason you were called out there? He said, there was a death. It was initially a death investigation. That meant a body was found in the trunk or the front trunk of a vehicle at the lot. Okay, and what is the front trunk on a Tesla called? It's called a frunk. And when you went out to the location, did you speak with various detectives from LAPD who initially responded? Okay, so when he gets to the location, there already were detectives there on the scene from LAPD already there. He said, yeah, I talked to him. Our West Bureau homicide section was initially called by the division detectives who initially responded, so I spoke with the West Bureau homicide detectives. Okay, so when you went to this location, what is it you were expecting to find? He said, I was expecting to find a body in a trunk. That was initially there was not a lot of information that was passed. So information was gathered as I arrived on the scene. Okay, but once you arrived, were you briefed on by some of these detectives? Yes. And were you also told, did you learn that this particular vehicle, this Tesla, had been impounded at some point by the Department of Transportation? Yes, ma'am. I came to find that the vehicle was impounded. It was cited by the Department of Transportation on September 3rd. It was impounded on September 5th to the impound lot of the Hollywood Tow. Okay, was there also any documentation on the windshield of that vehicle that you subsequently observed or confirmed that date? Confirmed that date? Yes, ma'am. There was a parking citation by the Department of Transportation that was on the driver's side windshield. Okay, next question. Did you speak also with individuals at the tow yard, like personnel that worked there, regarding why it was that they called the LAPD Hollywood Auto Detective Division? Yeah, the manager was doing a walkthrough of the impound area, and he noticed a strong odor coming from a vehicle. He identified that vehicle because the odor was so strong. Then he called the Hollywood detectives. Okay, detective, did you observe the same thing? He said, oh, yeah. Okay, what did you observe? Can you describe it? Well, when I arrived on the scene, the vehicle was a black Tesla with Texas license plate. Had the frunk open. So the frunk was open. And there was a partially unzipped black body bag with a dismembered torso and head. Also, it was missing some extremities. Okay, were you able to smell for yourself anything with respect to the vehicle? Oh, yeah. I mean, I've worked homicides for the better part of 18 years, so I have investigated many cases where you have decomposition of a human body. It is a very distinctive odor. It comes from on-field investigations, his experience of doing that, as well as attending numerous autopsies at the coroner's office where you have that same decomposing, very distinctive smell. All right, the prosecutor said, were you able to determine with respect to this vehicle who it was registered to? Yes, ma'am, he said. Utilizing department resources, it was registered to David Anthony Burke with an address. And I think the address was in Cypress, Texas. I don't recall the numbers offhand. Okay, well, now that you mentioned there was a body bag in the front trunk of the Tesla, it was unzipped. He said partially. It was partially unzipped. He said when the initial responding officer and detectives went out to the scene at the request, Your Honor, I object. Blair Burke is objecting. Move to strike. The judge said, well, okay, everything after the initial answer is unresponsive. So if you want to ask your next question, okay, sure. The latter portion will be stricken. Okay, great. So the prosecutor has to start her question over. Were you, in your conversations with the initial detectives who responded to the scene, did they explain why the front trunk was open and why the body bag was partially unzipped? Yes, they did. Okay, so what did you learn about that? The detective said, well, what I learned is when they were called to the impound lot at first, someone authored a search warrant to open the trunk because there was this stinking ass smell. And they believed that the smell was a decomposing body. And so they opened the trunk, partially unzipped the body bag, and they saw human remains. Okay, next question. In terms of the body bag, can you describe it? He said, yeah, it was black, kind of like vinyl plastic body bag. It had various handles and straps, and then a singular zipper that ran kind of like from the top to the bottom. So it was like a cadaver bag. Yes, ma'am. Your Honor, I have a set of 2 photographs. They're titled Body Bag Containing Victim's Head and Torso in the Front Trunk. And the date is September 8th, 2025. May I have this marked? Yes. All right. So she says, let's begin, the prosecutor says, by talking about the photograph on the left. Tell us, if you would, what are we looking at? He said, well, once the county medical examiner came to the scene, they removed that first cadaver bag or body bag from the front trunk, and then they placed it on the ground. And underneath that was another bag. It looked like maybe a garbage bag and had blue handles. It was underneath the body bag and the bottom of the storage of the trunk. Okay, so, Your Honor, it looks like I put 15 on the record instead. This is 2 photos as well. It's called Garbage Bag Containing Victim's Arms and Leg and Front Trunk. If this could be marked as 15, not 14, yes, okay, that'll be corrected. People's 15 for the record, okay. Okay, so next question. What do we see in the trunk around that black plastic bag? The detective said it was insect activity. There was maggots. Maggots. There was various stages of flies. So kind of a progression of decomposition from larvae to maggots to flies. And then there was, I don't know how to describe the other, like liquidy decaying matter. Okay, next question. So the trunk area in the bag, it was wet, not dry. Yes, ma'am. Yes, correct. It was wet. All right. And at some point, was this trash bag, this black plastic trash bag that we see here with a blue, some type of drawstring handle, was it opened at some point? Yes, ma'am, it was. It was partially opened in the trunk and then removed, taken out of the trunk, placed on the ground, and then the bag was opened where you could see various limbs of a body. Ugh. Arms, legs that had been severed. Oof. Okay, let's go back to the Exhibit 14 for a second. Okay, we'll start again. Okay, People's 14. If I could have this marked, Your Honor, it's body bag containing victim's head and torso. Got it. That'll be marked 14. Thank you. All right. Looking at the photograph on the left, what do we see here, detective? He said, well, it's kind of hard to tell. At least on my picture, I can't really tell, but I'm pretty sure that's the black cadaver bag that's in the front trunk. That was in the front trunk. Okay. Next question. Is that picture that was actually taken at the tow yard? Yes, ma'am. All these photos so far have been at the tow yard. Okay. With the front trunk in the open position? Yes, ma'am. Okay. And then if we look at the photograph to the right, People's 14, what are we looking at here? Well, there you see the head and the torso, but they don't have any limbs for the most part. That's what was discovered when the body bag was removed and completely unzipped. That's what remained in that body bag, cadaver bag. That's okay. So the next question, at some point in time, was the medical examiner's office notified? Yes. He said prior to anything being removed from the trunk, the medical examiner's office, their criminalist responded to the impound lot. So before anything even got taken out of the car, they had opened the trunk, they had partially unzipped the bag. They definitely knew there was some type of body parts in there. They called the medical examiner. No one took the bag out. Why? Because the medical examiner is the only one who's allowed to touch the body. So once you know there's a body, you have to wait for the medical examiner to get there. Okay. So once they arrived on the scene, do you process the scene alongside them? Yes. And their jurisdiction, does that pertain to the actual decedent's body? Yes, ma'am. In this case, like they pretty much, they did all the, I guess, like hands-on investigation regarding this body. No search of the vehicle, aside from opening of the trunk, was done in this initial investigation. Okay. But then as you, along with your partner and personnel from the medical examiner's department, you process the body. Are there discussions taking place as to the various items of evidence and like the condition of the body? Yes, ma'am. Okay. So next question. Now, once the body was removed from the trunk, or the frunk, as you've told us in Exhibit 15, you've described that there was a black plastic trash bag, as we see here in the photograph on the left, People's 15, that was found underneath. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. And once that bag was opened, what did you see? So this is the second bag, the one underneath. Well, once that bag was opened, the detective said, I saw 2 severed arms and 2 severed legs. But the legs had also been severed at another point. So like kind of like by the kneecap. So there was almost like 4 points to the legs, and then there's like 2 random arms. Okay, next question. In terms of the diameter of the front trunk of the Tesla, is it like a small area? It is kind of, yeah, the top portion of the trunk is like a little larger, but then as you come to the front of the storage compartment, it dips down. So it is very narrow. It's not very wide. Okay, next question. Looking at the photograph to the right of People's 15, is that what you observed once this black plastic trash bag was opened? Yes. And were photographs taken of this whole process at the tow yard? Initially, the cadaver bag was fully opened and removed from the trunk. Yes, yeah, we took photos. There was a photographer there from LAPD, and photos were taken by the criminalist from the medical examiner's office as well. Okay, next question. Were additional photos taken once the cadaver bag was removed from the front trunk? The plastic bag, the limbs, the severed limbs, as we've seen in Exhibit 15, were all those photographs taken by both LAPD and the medical examiner's office? Yes, ma'am. Did you notice anything unusual about the cut surfaces of the limbs? Okay, did you notice anything unusual? They objected it. They go back and forth, but the judge is going to let the question be asked. He said, yeah, it was very obvious. There were these blue pieces of plastic or some type of fiber that seemed to be embedded in the cut surfaces at various points of the body. Blue pieces of plastic. Your Honor, the prosecutor said, I have an exhibit I want to have marked as People's Exhibit 44. It's titled Medical Examiner Number 25-1452, September 2025, Blue Plastic Fragments Embedded in Right Knee. Okay, we can mark that as Exhibit 44. Thank you. Okay, I'm showing you this exhibit, Detective. Looking at these little blue pieces, is that what you're talking about? These little cut ends of the severed limbs got all this blue crap in it? Yes, he said. There were several little pieces, some darker blue, some lighter blue. Uh-oh. But they definitely stood out because there was like many of them. Okay, next question. Did you notice anything else with respect to the hands of the decedent in this case? Yes, I did. I noticed on her right hand, she had a tattoo that said shush, like shh, S-H-H-H. That was on her right index finger. And then on her left hand, there was the left ring finger and the pinky finger had been removed and were not with the rest of the severed limbs. Okay, next question. When you say removed, you mean cut off, amputated? Yes, ma'am. All right. Your Honor, Silverman said, I have another set of 2 photographs on this exhibit I want you to mark as People's 38. It's a titled Tattoo on Victim's Right Index and Left Ring and Pinky Fingers Amputated, Medical Examiner at Hollywood Tow Yard. All right, Detective, I'm showing you these 2 photographs, starting with the one on the left. Tell us what we're looking at here, please. Detective said, okay, so that was the left hand. That was found in the black trash bag. It appeared to have the 2 left, like ring finger, the pinky finger, those were chopped off. Okay, but what about the photograph on the right? He said, oh, that one is a tattoo on her right index finger with the word shh, ... That was on her right hand. Okay, next question. Based on the condition of the decedent, as she was removed from the front trunk of the Tesla, was there a face where you could make out any facial features? No. There was a lot of decomposition the skin slippage, and she was unrecognizable. Okay. The judge said, I'm going to stop you there. Okay, Your Honor, but Beth Silverman, the prosecutor, said, we're going to go ahead and take our morning recess. We did have some morning matters. I'll give the court reporter a break. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please wait until I announce the break. If you do leave the courtroom, which you're certainly welcome to do, please note where you are sitting so we don't have any confusion. Take your same seats coming back, and we'll have a 15-minute break. The court, okay, so they come back from the break. All right, we're back on the record. We have David present, all counsel present. We have the witness back on the stand, Detective Byers. I remind you, you are under oath, and we're on direct examination. Ms. Silverman, you may continue. She says, okay, thank you. Prosecutor says, so, detective, on September 8th, 2025, when you were out at the tow yard, did you do something with the Tesla that day? Yes. We had our LAPD tow transport the vehicle to our, what we call Piper Tech. It's like our kind of like holding for vehicles for further processing. Piper Tech, Piper Technical Center? That belongs to LAPD? Yes, ma'am. And that was so the vehicle could be processed? Yes, ma'am. And that occurred the next day after, like that happened the next day after you found the body. That was on September 9th? Yes. And were you present for the processing of the vehicle? The detective said, I was. And on September 8th, after the processing that was done by you, as well as the medical examiner's department, the tow yard, was the decedent transported, was the body transported to the Forensic Science Center? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so did you also observe during the processing of the Tesla that took place, as you said, on September 9th, 2025, any documents, any receipts, anything inside the Tesla that you then followed up on? He said, yes, I observed a receipt in the vehicle for a purchase made at the Ross Dress for Less, girl. Please. This caused me to have detectives follow up to that location to attempt to retrieve any surveillance video according to that transaction that could have possibly been made. All right, and this is the Ross Dress for Less located at 8985 Venice Boulevard? Yes, ma'am. Was there a date on that receipt that you found inside the Tesla? Yes, ma'am. It was July 29th, 2025. Okay, next question. Once the surveillance video from that Ross Dress for Less was obtained, did you watch the surveillance video? Yes, ma'am. What did you observe on that video that was dated July 29th, 2025? He said, so on that receipt, there was obviously a date and time of transaction. So the surveillance video was from the transaction. And at that point, we observed an individual making a transaction who later was determined to be David Burke. Okay, but did you obtain any other surveillance video with respect to David Burke in the black Tesla? Yes, ma'am. There was surveillance video from numerous places all over the place. We actually recovered during our investigation. Hashtag gotta love flock. Okay, but what surveillance video did you observe regarding David and him interacting with that black Tesla that's registered to him? Well, I observed a video of the Tesla driving through kind of the Hollywood, Culver City, Los Angeles area. This appeared to be the route to and from what was later determined to be his home address. Okay, but where was the home address? A 1368 Doheny Place. There's some confusion with 1368 because there's another name for that street, Vireo. So street signs are posted as Doheny Place, but then certain search engines like Google, Vireo comes up as that address. But they're all the same place. 1368 Vireo, 1368 Doheny Place. These are all the same. Okay, next question. In terms of that address, 1368, is that an address in the Hollywood Hills? Yes, ma'am. Did you also obtain iCloud records registered to David? Yes, ma'am. And did those show anything with respect to the defendant David's interaction with that same black Tesla? The iPhone records, iCloud records. Yes, ma'am. During the processing of the vehicle, one of the things we did was take screenshots of the Tesla infotainment center, the onboard computer. This shows navigation. It shows that it connects and disconnects from cell phones. So photographs were taken from that and then ultimately compared to his iCloud. And this indicated a cell phone connection, which was identified as belonging to David. And it was last connected on the same day he went to the Ross Dress for Less, July 29th last year. This was around 2:15, 2:18 p.m. local time over there. Okay, so next question. That was the same day, the July 29th date, the same day as the receipt in the Tesla where he went to the Ross Dress for Less? Yes. Next question, did it appear that that was the last connection and then disconnection of his phone to the Tesla? Yes, ma'am. Now, did he have his phone programmed into the Tesla by like a certain name? Yes, he did. This was in particular an iPhone 16, and the name of that phone was Tranquilizer. Okay, next question. Did you determine whether that phone titled named Tranquilizer was associated with David's iCloud account? Yes, it was. We did a Celebrite or an extraction of his iCloud. The reader associated with that iPhone to his email address, which is associated with his iCloud. Okay, next question. When you say his email address, was there only one email address associated with David? Oh no, there was multiple. And then David's lawyer, Your Honor, we would raise an objection here. This is improper. This is opinion. There is no foundation for this. The judge said, right. Why don't you lay a foundation as to where this information is coming from? Prosecutor said, sure. Next question, detective. How did you determine the defendant, in fact, had multiple email accounts? He said, well, I authored a search warrant to Apple requesting information. I wrote the search warrant for his name, his birth date, and associated addresses that I knew of, including his Texas address, his LA address, his known phone numbers. I wrote that information to Apple, requesting any and all records, and Apple, in turn, provided a return, which identified multiple email addresses associated with those requested identifiers. Okay. So next question, detective. Were you also able to determine from the records that you received pursuant to search warrants that David owned a particular type or model of iPhone? The one that was connected to the Tesla Tranquilizer? Yes. It was identified as an iPhone 16 Pro. Okay. So, throughout the course of your investigation, detective, had you been able to locate or find that phone, Tranquilizer? No. He said, I have not been able to find that particular phone, no. Okay. Your Honor, Beth Silverman, the prosecutor, said, I have an exhibit in two parts. The first part or page I would like to have marked as People's Exhibit 17A. The iPhone 16 Tranquilizer, in quotes. It was disconnected from the Tesla. The source is iCloud, and the date was the last day he drove the car, July 29th. On this exhibit, it looks like two photographs are there with some inserts, close-up photographs of things, photos and stuff all together. It says Celebrite Extraction Report at the top. It's titled Defendant's iCloud Username Falloit, Falloit. This is his iCloud username. And 00112@gmail.com. Can I have those exhibits marked? Yes. Okay. All right, detective, I'm showing you the first exhibit 17A. Let's focus right now on the photograph on the left. Do you recognize what you see here? Yes. So what is it? He said it's an extraction report from Celebrite. Specifically, one of the search criteria or areas that you can look is devices that are connected to a particular vehicle. In this case, it was the Tesla Model X, identified as the device name. And then if you look all the way to the right, the source file, meaning what may have connected or disconnected to the Tesla, it identifies iPhone 16 Pro with the kind of name of the phone is Tranquilizer. Your Honor, David's lawyer, at this time the defense would object. This is calling for improper opinion. The court's like, okay, so if you want to lay a foundation... Okay, right, sure. Okay, so the judge said with regard to his ability to read these reports, how do we know that that's what they show? Beth Silverman said, oh, right, sure, okay. Tell us about your experience with cell phones and iCloud extractions, the use of Celebrite. The detective said, oh, sure. This is a software. And when I write a warrant to, like, for example, Apple, in this case, we're provided with a certain amount of records from that. In this case, that the provider then in turn, were able to make those records, put them into a readable format, which is the Celebrite reader. This takes that kind of like raw data and puts it into like a readable format, identifying certain criteria, whether it be a timeline, a photo, videos, a subscriber, or in this particular case, device connectivity. it shows you that information that was provided in that reading format, that readable format. So this is a reader for raw data from a cell phone carrier or social media platform. Okay, so next question. Oh, sorry, the judge wanted to say something. Yes, the judge said, if you could please explain what your background is, what your training, your experience as to obtaining this information. The judge is basically like, how do I know you know what you're looking at? The detective said, well, when I write the warrant, I provide that to our investigative service section. These are analysts. They take the info, they provide it into this reader. So me, I don't personally physically put it in this reader. I just take the information and look at it as it's in this readable form. So I don't do the parsing into Cellebrite. That's done by our analysts. Prosecutor said, okay, so they put it into software, and that allows you on your own computer at work to look at or read the info. Is that correct? He said, yes. I am not analyzing that. I'm just looking at the reader that allows the raw data to be read versus kind of like computer language, I guess you could say. Blair Burke, David's lawyer, is objecting. Again, she said, I'm renewing my objection. This officer is not an appropriate reader of this information. He did not do the extraction. He did not participate in the extraction. He certainly hasn't presented himself as an expert. He would simply just be reading a report to the court. The judge said, okay, I'm sorry, Beth, prosecutor? Beth said, this ain't a report, Your Honor. This is a Cellebrite extraction that contains all of the information from a particular cell phone. The detective, on a routine basis, as I was just about to ask him, receives these, and he's familiar with it. And he is an expert in how to use the Cellebrite software in order to filter for particular information that they're interested in. The judge said, okay, looks over to David's side. Do you want to respond? David's lawyer, Blair Burke, Your Honor, I believe since this officer is indicating he did not participate in the extraction, he did not handle the device that was being extracted, he did not handle the Cellebrite information, he is not a proper witness on this content. He cannot testify to the content of what was found. The judge said, all right, thank you. Your objection's overruled. Moving on. Sorry, you want to ask Ms. Burke, I will deem it a continuing objection as to his testimony. Blair Burke, David's lawyer, said thank you. All right. Next question. Detective, can you tell us approximately how many times over the course of your career have you used this software to examine data from a cell phone, iCloud, tablet, computer, or items that would contain digital electronic evidence? He said, oh, it would have to be in the hundreds. Every case has a cell phone, a computer, a tablet, or some sort of device that's going to be used. So I frequently look at the reports. Probably in every case, that would be in the hundreds. Okay. So is that something that's not decreasing, but in fact becoming more and more and more and more common? Increasing in the fact that technology has changed. Everybody has digital evidence. And is that something that, as you said, is a component of all the cases you handle? Yes. And where do you send devices so that information or data can be extracted and put into this so-called readable format like Cellebrite, what we see here? He said, well, we have, we use FBI labs. We also have a lab in Orange County. We have the ability to do it in our office at the Robbery Homicide Division. So these extractions are primarily done by our people at Robbery Homicide. Okay, so it's not just done here in LA County. This is like, as you mentioned, Orange County. Are you familiar with, or do you communicate often with detectives from other counties and other states across the country? He said, oh, absolutely. And do you sit on a board for homicide detectives? Yes, I do. And do you often discuss with other homicide detectives digital evidence and how one goes about parsing through or examining evidence relevant to an electronic device like a cell phone, iCloud, computer, tablet, or computer laptop or tower? Yeah, absolutely. He said, I attended Cellebrite trainings as well. Okay, next question. With respect to your communications and meetings and conferences and discussions with detectives around the country, is Cellebrite a tool that's used widely? The detective said, absolutely. Okay. And so, so next question. You said you also received trainings in Cellebrite? Yes, ma'am. We have in-house trainings through Cellebrite extraction experts, but I've also attended those on more than one occasion. Okay, anyway, so Beth Silverman's like, back to what I was saying then. Let's move on to Exhibit 17A. Does this item here on the left side appear to be the top of a Cellebrite report? Yes, ma'am. And if we look at the left side where it says extraction report, it's specific to a particular item for which you wrote a search warrant and you got the evidence? Yes. It's a return from the iCloud warrant that I wrote to Apple regarding David Burke. Okay, next question. Does a Cellebrite allow you to filter or look for certain evidence within a device? Yes, it does. There are search options within the report, the reader. Okay, so but like for instance, can you search for things like or filter like things like an email address? Yes, ma'am. Can you filter for contacts? Yes, ma'am. Can you filter for any devices that were connected to the iCloud? Yes. Can you filter for dates and times? Yes. Can you also filter for like connectivity to various items such as like a Tesla, for example? Yes, ma'am. Can you also filter for artifacts like photographs, images, video, things like that? Yes, ma'am. All right. So looking back again at Exhibit 17A, does this particular report indicate or provide information regarding the defendant's iCloud? That the connections to a Tesla Model X? Yes. Oh, and the connection to a Tesla Model X. Yes. The black Tesla at the tow yard, what model was that? Model X. And in this same document, I understand this is just the top of it, but sometimes these documents, if you were to print them, like the whole thing out, they could be like tens of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands of pages. Yes, ma'am. And this iCloud, by the way, was like 6 or 8 terabytes. It's not really realistic to print it out in like a sheet form. Okay, next question. When you say 6 to 8 terabytes, you're talking about 6 to 8 terabytes of data? Yes, ma'am. So if you're talking about that volume of evidence, what would that be consistent with? Like, in other words, like, would you be able to, like, without software filter for certain specific types of evidence? Would you be able to read through 6 to 8 terabytes of data? No. Okay, no. Okay, next question. So this is a way that you can hone in on and target certain types of information that you might be interested in. Yeah, like you mentioned, dates, email addresses, phone numbers, contacts, those type of search criteria. Okay, so next question. If we look over to the right, where we see a red box, it says source file. What do we see there? He said, well, source file is referring to the iPhone 16 Tranquilizer. 16 Pro. I mentioned that earlier. The name of the phone is Tranquilizer. Okay, next question. Looking at the little inset box below where have a little red line with a call out. This enlarges this information. Does the source file show Tranquilizer and in parentheses iPhone 16? Yes. And looking at the photograph to the right in People's Exhibit 17A, what is this a photograph of? The detective said this is a photograph that I mentioned earlier of the infotainment system in the Tesla. This is the display of David's Tesla that was in impound. Okay, so next question. And the very first item where there is a red box and then again a line with a little call out inset below, what does it say? He said it says Tranquilizer, and it gives the date of July 29th and identifying it as an Apple iPhone. July 29th. Next question. July 29th is the date you indicated was the last time the iPhone 16 Pro connected to the black Tesla Model X, right? Yes. So let's look at Exhibit 17B. Is this another Cellebrite extraction report, or at least the top of it? Yes, ma'am. That's from the same iCloud return. But this one is titled Defendant's iCloud Username FallOit00112, correct? Yes. And what did you find in this particular filter of the extraction? He said, well, so what I had written for David's iCloud, that was one of the emails that was provided by Apple as belonging to him. I believe that one is the one that contained the most data in it. And then it also, as according to this report, associates that Tranquilizer iPhone 16 to that particular email address. Okay, so did this Tesla infotainment system have numerous addresses in addition to David's? Which we talked about yesterday being the, 1368, already being the 1368 Vireo Doheny Place address. Did it have other addresses in the Tesla infotainment system navigation? Yes, it did. Okay, next question. Were there any locations within that computer system or infotainment system that was of interest to you Any locations of interest to you, detective? He said, oh yeah, there was reference in that system to charging station on July 29th. So he charged his Tesla on the last day that he drove it. And then as the investigation kind of evolved, there was also a trip identified in the navigation system that showed a trip to Santa Barbara, Lake Cachuma, I think it was. And within Lake Cachuma or the Santa Barbara County area, in addition to Lake Cachuma, was there also an address for navigation to a charger area in the Santa Ynez Valley? Yes, there was. And with respect to both the lake and the Santa Ynez Valley locations, was there a location or a time? Was there a time range for that, detective? He said, yeah, there was. So on the screenshots of the infotainment system, they're all identified by dates. So you had July dates. This would be the reference to his home address, the 1368 address. And then in May 2025, there was an identification to the Lake Cachuma Santa Ynez trip. Okay. And you also mentioned that you reviewed a significant amount of surveillance video. Did you also review neighborhood surveillance video for David and like around David's residence? Yes. So from July 29th, the same date, that was the last date his phone connected to the Tesla, and the same date where he went to the Ross Dress for Less, that all matched up for that one date, and it matched the receipt where he did go shopping, and you saw the surveillance video of him in there shopping. Yes. Recovered video from a resident address on Doheny that had cameras that covered both Doheny Drive and Doheny Place. I looked at those videos. Prosecutor said, okay, so what did you observe with respect to specifically the last date that David drove the Tesla, July 29th? What did you observe specifically? He said, well, on the camera that faces Doheny Drive, I saw a black Tesla drive down Doheny Drive. And as it goes out of frame, it turns right at Bluebird. So the vehicle drives, passes the camera, and then it's out of frame. But then maybe 2 minutes later, I reviewed the camera that covers Doheny Place, which when you look at a map almost looks like an alley, but it actually is an actual street. You see David walking down that alley and into the front door of his house at 1368. Okay, next question. When you said kind of looks like an alley, is that consistent with the streets within the Hollywood Hills area that are very narrow? Yes, ma'am. So Beth puts forward another exhibit. It's a photo with a close-up, 2 photographs titled Screenshot of David Returning Home After Parking His Tesla, July 29th. Okay, detective, I'm showing you Exhibit 18. Do you recognize what you see here? He said, yeah. So to the left, that's Doheny Place. Very narrow. The residences are really... the left-hand side of the back of the residences are on Doheny Drive. So it's kind of like a north to south look. But in the video, that's where I saw him walk down that alley right there. And then, wait. Just to interrupt you briefly, prosecutor says, this is a screenshot from a surveillance video, right? Correct. Okay. So if we look at the person that we can see just where the yellow line ends, over to the enlargement of the call out over there, we see on the right side. What are we looking at here, detective? What? She said this right here. Okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha. That's David, Mr. Burke, walking down the street into ultimately going into his house. Okay. So on the video you watched as he walked down Bluebird, is that adjacent to Doheny Place? Yeah. So you don't see Bluebird Avenue, right? You just see where Bluebird is. And then to go from where the vehicle is parked, which was Bluebird Avenue, you would have to have walked down Bluebird Avenue onto Doheny Place. So that's what they're mapping out David walking. Okay, next question. On the video, you saw him go into his residence? Yes. So you could see him walking from the direction of Bluebird, where his vehicle was parked. Eventually, it was towed by the Department of Transportation. Yes. And then she goes to another exhibit. And that's where I'm going to have to start kind of winding down because I do need to get off. I have a dentist appointment, so I have to go soon. Thank you so much, Spaced Out Alone, for the gems. Thank you so much to Kinley for the gems. Thank you so much to Lala's Real Edit for the 1999 super chat. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Carinsa, for the 30 gems. Thank you, Sneaky Side, for the $2 California. Rabbit says, oh, shit. I predicted it. Rabbit said on her live that SF Investigates got kicked out of court today by Beth. And I figured that because they do have this witness exclusion agreement going on, and he did testify before the grand jury, and there's a rule right now in this case where anybody that who testified before the grand jury is not going to be allowed to sit in as a witness or whatever, as a participant in the courtroom. So SF Investigates got in today into the courtroom, but then he got kicked out by the prosecutor. Now remember, he's already been being picked on by this prosecutor. He got that little fake little shady little fake subpoena. He was threatened that if he said anything about being on the grand jury as a witness, he would be facing some type of criminal charges. And he was told he wasn't allowed to talk to Celeste Rivas Hernandez's family lawyer on Monday. He was embarrassed and called out in front of everybody. And now today he was kicked out the courtroom. Man, Beth Silverman really don't like him, huh? Dang. But also at the same time, like if they have a rule in place where nobody that was in the grand jury can be in there, that's a rule. That's a rule. What are you going to do about it? Okay, so let's see. Thanks so much to Sparkles Bexy Star for the 2 gem sparkles. Thank you to Sneaky Side for the flower gems. Thank you, Sweet Potatoes Yum, for the 200 gems flow state. Thank you to Carinsa for the makeup brush. Thank you to Donna Stillwell for the 200 gems sunshine. And thank you to Bexy Star for the gems. Y'all are making the gems gem in here. I do have y'all going over there to Rabbit's live. She is live right now discussing the David Anthony Burke case. She may even be more updated. You know, we were reading day 1 transcripts just now, and that was her who sent that to me. So thank you so much to her. We are on page 70 of 173, and we will get to more of that later. I do have to run for now to do some pre-existing errands, and thank you so much to Sad Girl for the 30 gems. I don't think I'm going to be back today. I'm going to the dentist, so I have to have like a dental procedure. I'm having like part of it today, and then another part of it is going to be like in, I don't know, a week or 2 or something. So I probably won't be back today. Probably going to be like numb or whatever, but that's all I really had for this one. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation, girl. Facts ain't defamation. Neither are opinions. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. Please don't contact anybody mentioned in today's stream, and I'll see y'all probably tomorrow. Love you, mean it. Okay, bye.